Okay, good morning, everyone. I am Carrie Warnick with Multi-Region Purchasing Co-op, and welcome to Procurement Basics and Beyond. And full 3 hours, we're going to cover a lot of ground, and I do welcome questions during the presentation. Hopefully there will be time at the end for questions, but if you do have a question, please type it into the Q&A panel, not the chat panel. The chat panel is for chatting if you have some comments you wanted to make, but if you actually have a question, Lana Anderson is my co-host this morning to help me watch those questions. So we'll go ahead and get started. Just a little introduction slide. Got to get this going here. Here we go. It's a little bit about me. I'm actually rolling into my 12th year being with running a large co-op in the state of Texas. And for some crazy reason, procurement has become my passion. And I love talking about it. I love teaching about it and helping schools better understand what is needed to be in compliance. So that's the crazy side of me. This year, I decided to share a few pictures of my pets so you can get to know me a little better. That is my dog. He is awesome, and I'm crossing my fingers he does not bark in the background during today's training. Yes, I do have a pretty cool lizard, and of course, my motorcycle is, of course, a pet. That is my weekend fun, and I pretty much ride it every day. So that alone probably puts me in the crazy category, right? All right. On to the serious stuff. So hopefully you downloaded the presentation to your computer. Maybe you printed it out. It was many pages. You can take notes. One thing to know about that PDF version of this presentation is that I set it up so that you can toggle on and off my speaker notes. So many of you might want to take some notes, but a lot of the things I will be saying during this presentation are in my speaker notes. It's a nice little version of PDF that you can do when it comes to PowerPoints, and I love it. So it allows you to see the slides in print or see speaker notes and slides. That's pretty cool. What are we going to do today? I'm going to hopefully provide you with a better understanding of what is required in regard to the phases of the procurement process, cost analysis, procurement methods. I'm going to do a deep dive into micro purchasing, because there were updates to guidance this past year. I'm going to touch on buying local and buy American provision, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about your procedures manual and your code of conduct manual. I always like to share acronyms because when I first came into this industry, I felt like my coworkers were speaking a foreign language, and it's so specific to our industry, which a lot of industries have specific acronyms. But I'd like to point out a couple that there are duplicate names for a single thing, and that is Texas calls you a contracting entity, CE, but USDA calls you a recipient agency. And because there's a lot of crossover there, you might see where they ask for your RA number. Well, that is your CE ID. One and the same. We use some software programs that are national programs. They still use RA, but Texas calls you a CE. The other one is entitlement or PAL. Now, if you've been in this industry long enough, you remember PAL stands for Planned Assistance Level. It is still called that by USDA. However, Texas calls it your entitlement. So those are your federal dollars that you get to use on the 4 different food programs every January and February, and then throughout the school year. So fun stuff there. Trust me, there are many more acronyms, but this is the short list, things we will sort of be talking about today. All right, I'm going to start with background. So as you know, every purchase you make with your child nutrition federal funds must be procured. Procurement covers all aspects of the acquisition and delivery of goods and services. That means it spans the whole contract life cycle from identifying what you need to the end of the service contract. So what is the definition of procurement? Well, it's defined as a multi-step process for buying goods and services in exchange for money or value. Keep that in
Carrie?
mind as we go through this presentation today.
Carrie, real quick, can you hear me?
Yes.
They are asking for a link to your PowerPoint and I cannot find it in my email.
Let me put that in here. It's in the Google folder link that I sent out. Let me get to that folder. Give me a minute here. I am looking. I will put it in the chat. Okay, I just placed that link in the chat. So what that will do, it'll take you to the multi-region members procurement tools folder. And inside that folder, there are many documents, all of which I will be showing you today as I talk about various aspects of procurement. A lot of these are just tools that I've created for myself and for the members to help them function a little easier in their jobs. So many of you attending are co-op members and you're going to be familiar with this folder, but you can get this presentation there and it is in PDF form. So hopefully that helps you. All right, so obviously we're back talking about the background of procurement, and just keep in mind that, you know, federal funds, if you're going to do any type of procurement, you're going to have rules and regulations. I mean, that's government dollars that you're dealing with. And the Code of Federal Regulations, also known as the CFR, is your federal or USDA regulations. And I do have the citations there. And I think even right now it's 200.318 through 200.327. I think I noticed that the other day. And obviously there's some pieces in 7 CFR. The state agency, Texas Department of Agriculture, has the Administrator's Reference Manual, known as the ARM. And they added 3 new sections this past year. So it used to be section 17 was procurement, but now you've got 17A, B, and C. So I highly encourage you to be familiar with where to locate these 2 documents. There's an electronic CFR on the internet that you can look up, and I have it as a bookmark. I go there all the time, just reminding myself. I don't know how many times we can all read these regulations. It seems like we have to always go back. Many of you have made the statement you feel like you need to be a lawyer to understand the jargon, and I do get that. And so hopefully I will help decipher some of that jargon today for you. All right. 3 things to remember amongst a bunch of other things to remember. One is that child nutrition federal funds are governed by USDA and TDA. Many of you have to work closely with your purchasing department, who is also dealing with other types of bids. Keep in mind, if this is a bid going out using child nutrition funds, it's USDA and TDA regulations. EDGAR, which governs federal funds for education, is a very common acronym used by your purchasing team. And often they will try to sort of corral you into, oh my gosh, that solicitation needs, you know, EDGAR. Where are your this, that, and the other with regulations in EDGAR? That has nothing to do with child nutrition bids. So even if you have taken an EDGAR training, and I think they did a procurement in the 21st century a few years ago, I attended it. At the tail end of that training, when they got to child nutrition procurement, all they could say was, we refer you back to the CFR. So while there are some similarities and several similarities between EDGAR regulations and USDA and TDA regulations, there are some differences. Then you've got Texas Education Agency, TEA, and that entity governs state funds for education. So there's kind of your big reminders there on what governs what types of bids. It just depends on what funds you're using. Currently, purchasing thresholds. So we've got federal, which is a higher purchasing threshold, $250,000 if it's going to be, if you need to do a formal bid or simplified purchase acquisition. $10,000 is the micro purchase threshold. However, CEs can self-certify and increase their micro purchase threshold up to $50,000. And that is found in 2 CFR 200.320. Don't worry about writing that down. I have it in my speaker notes. But that is an option. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that coming up. Obviously, USDA allows state agencies such as Texas Department of Ag to make more restrictive these purchasing thresholds. State of Texas does. They take that simplified purchase acquisition threshold and they say, no, if you hit $50,000 or more, you must do a formal bid. They did agree to the 10,000 micro purchase threshold. It took them a half a year after USDA came out with that $10,000 threshold. And I think we were all holding our breath on that one, but it is set at 10,000 today. If you're a really large district, I'm going to really recommend you look at this self-certification, because if you're so large, 10,000 doesn't really help you out. And so micro purchase threshold is kind of off the table, except for something really small, which if you're really large, you don't have anything really small that you're purchasing. And then of course you might have local or district thresholds. You are allowed to take those thresholds and make them more restrictive. The one thing you as a local district cannot do, or that the state agency can't do, is they cannot take the federal thresholds and make them less restrictive. So TDA could not, come in and say, oh no, micro purchase, we want that to be 15 or 20,000. That is not allowed. You as a district can't say our micro purchase, well, you can if you self-certify, but you can't come in and say, oh, we're going to raise that simplified purchase acquisition to 75,000. 50,000 is the threshold for the state. But you can't make it more restrictive. I know some schools that won't let their child nutrition departments purchase anything over 35,000 without a formal bid, or even 15,000. Some schools don't allow micro purchasing at all. They require 3 quotes on everything. So every district is a little different in what you do, but just know that you can make that more restrictive. I hope your district doesn't do that to you, because it's already feels restrictive as it is right now. And does it matter which threshold you use, federal, state, or local? Yes, you must follow the most restrictive threshold or policy. So that means if you're at a district and your district says, hey, child nutrition, we're not doing micro purchasing, you need to get 3 quotes. You have to follow your district's policy. It would be more restrictive than the state policy. So you must follow that more restrictive situation. All right. I'm going to talk about the 4 phases of procurement. And Lena, if you get a question anywhere in this presentation, just kind of holler at me. I'm not watching the Q&A screen, so just let me know if anything pops up.
Sure, they just asked more about self-certifying for micro. I told them you'll hit that in a second.
That is coming up. So yes, hang tight on that one. I will do, in fact, one of the slides has a link on the self-certification, so you'll have that through TEA, and we're going to talk about it in more detail here in a minute. So I'm going to touch on the 4 phases of procurement, and then we're going to deep dive into how these go into the different procurement methods and talk a little bit more about each one. So we're going to start with planning. And obviously, planning is an essential tool. It is a key component. You can't even do a solicitation until you plan. That requires forecasting. What is needed? Are you needing a product? Are you needing a service? When do you need it? Is it needed now, right away? Is this something you can, you're planning for next month, or are we talking about next year? Pretty much at this time going forward, and even before this time, child nutrition needs to start planning for the next school year, a year out. And I know that feels a little stressful, especially during this pandemic, but you should already be thinking about what are you going to do for commodities if you're going to process commodities. If you're in my co-op, you're about to be forecasting for school year 22-23. So you have to get in that mindset, even that far out. Sometimes your planning is an immediate plan. Sometimes it's next month or next semester, or whatever that might be. How much will it cost? How do you know how much it will cost? We're going to talk about cost analysis and how you go about analyzing cost and anticipated increases. And then how will you pay for it? Is this something that is going to be utilizing your child nutrition funds? Is this something that is not, and maybe you don't need to go into all the steps of a solicitation? So a lot of things go into planning, and it really is the most important part, because if you have the best planning done, all the rest of it kind of falls into place. All right, so what does forecasting look like? And I've heard districts tell me it's impossible, Carrie, for us to forecast. However, if you've planned your menu, and I know you guys hate to hear that, if you've planned your menu for the next year, you're planning, yes, we can have growth in the student body that participates. We can have a brand new school that you open up, a school may close, you may have diminished participation. All these different factors can happen overnight, over a short period of time, unanticipated. However, you do your best planning at the time when you're getting ready to release your bids. It's what you know at that point in time. Everything can be forecasted for the most part. Now, if you're changing your menu all the time, that's going to make it more difficult. So the goal is to get set on a menu. Even if you're doing seasonal menus, get all of your seasonal menus set up. If you're doing a monthly menu, get all 9 months set up. Planning, forecasting. What did you do in your past program? What did you do this current year? Is it working? Is something not working? And then, of course, what are your future needs? All of this is so important. It's probably the busiest time for me in getting ready to release a solicitation and trying to gather forecasting from all my members. Right now, we've been working crazy, pulling together, bid specifications and what are the products we're going to go out for in this commodity bid, what's even going to be offered next year. A lot of communication with the processors are going on right now, lots of questions being asked that some of them are angry they're having to answer. Truth. I had one processor get upset with me when I said, hey, what products do you think you're going to produce next year? I got a phone call. He was not happy. We worked it out. It's a loaded question, right? And it's stressful. The planning piece can be stressful, but if you do your best, look at what you're doing currently, what worked last year, what's working this year. And during this pandemic, I have not recommended any major changes. If it's working, don't change it. It's that whole mantra is like, if it's working, don't fix it. Nothing needs to be fixed. So you have to consider all these different aspects when you're getting ready for procurement. Now, how much does it cost? Well, this was a big one that cropped up in procurement reviews this past school year. Cost analysis. There was a lot of confusion around a cost analysis, lack of understanding of how do you go about doing a cost analysis? What does it look like? Is there a form? Is there a formula? Who's required to do it if you're in a purchasing co-op? Does the district have to do it? Does the co-op have to do it? So here's what I can say about all of this and what we learned in the past year. Co-ops must follow all the same regulations and policies that a school must follow in regard to procurement. So what I'm doing is no different than what is expected of you. Now, we're both expected to do a cost analysis. You must do a cost analysis so that you can determine your budget, what you're facing in potential increases. Is it reasonable? It gives you something that will base your contract value on. You can look at your budget. Budget is being planned a year out. And that way you can say, okay, are we going to fit into our budget? Are we going to need to do something else to infuse more money? Do we need to back off of some of the products we've chosen that are maybe more expensive and go with a lesser expensive product? So it's all part of this planning and forecasting and figuring out what can you afford. But then it also gives you this idea, if you have done your analysis based on anticipated cost increases to current products you're using or planning to use. When you get your bid back and your pricing, is the pricing bid reasonable based on what you anticipated? Based on, is it a renewal year? Is it a new bid year? have we been facing all kinds of crazy price increases because of what's going on with the pandemic. So this is a really major part of planning as well. And you will be asked for your cost analysis document during your procurement review. So this is required. You can't get away from it. If you don't have it, it could produce a finding. And we know that going forward, all these reviews are now kind of lumped together as one big review. And the goal is to not have any findings. So the cost analysis is very important. I do one because I'm required to understand what is our total contract value. So when I do collecting all these estimated quantities, I've got a spreadsheet that figures out what are the anticipated costs, what's this contract value. I have to put that out there in my solicitation because I have to watch and make sure we don't go over our contract value by a certain percentage, which I'll talk about a little more when we get to formal bids. It's that material change. So the cost analysis planning piece is really important. Now, TDA does offer a USDA cost analysis worksheet, and I've given you the link on this slide. However, I've got, I do have a cost analysis that I used this past year, and it was actually a double form. So hopefully you can see that on the screen. I did ask my districts. I required it last year. Not everyone did participate. It was brand new in this upcoming school year. It will be a mandate if you want to participate on a bid that you must forecast, because it does two things. Not only does it tell me what you're planning to purchase to the best of your ability at this time, what you know you're planning to purchase, but you give me your estimated quantities, and then it spreadsheet calculates out if the product has a 0 increase, if it has a very small 1% increase, or maybe even upwards to a 9% increase. Now, this is what I did this past year. Going into next year, I can't even tell you what I think is going to be an increase. It worries me to even go down that thought path, because what we've seen recently in pricing increases has really been way above 9%. I mean, we have seen some crazy pricing increases. So I'll probably be shooting high, like 15%. This sheet, and it's shared with you in that folder, you can take it. It can be used for any type of bid, any kind of a product. You drop in your descriptions. When you enter your estimated quantities in cases, that's not working, is it? It should auto calculate that. Why is that not working? Well, obviously I've got a broken spreadsheet. I'll fix that before you download it. It should be calculating out what is the anticipated cost based on no increase versus the highest increase. And then you get this nice range, and that helps you with your budget. You could look at the worst scenario. Okay, if I'm going to order this one product here, it could cost me $4,155 by the end of the school year. Can my budget afford that? This is a true cost analysis as well as a forecasting document, which TDA may be asking you. Did you forecast? Where's the proof? Or did you forecast with your co-op? Where's the proof? So you could come up with your own document, like a calculator, however you want to do it. You could take this USDA one that TDA offers, or you've got that one that I created. The fun news is you won't be doing that spreadsheet anymore in my co-op, because I have had a software program created specifically for forecasting. I will be rolling it out for our commodity bid. And so those of you that are going to process will get firsthand experience with the new software, and I think you're going to be really pleased. So there's the hot breaking news on that. And I'm pretty proud of it, I will say. All right, moving on. Soliciting. Obviously, you've got your plan laid out. Now you've got to, through your cost analysis, you determine what's the most appropriate procurement method. Can you get away with a micro purchase? Can you do a small purchase? Or do you need to do a formal bid? And that was really the main reason for cost analysis in the beginning, is to help you determine the most appropriate procurement method. And I did have a school one year, and they wanted me to add some products to a bid, and I said, I can't, that's a material change. So what did you do last year? Do you think you exceeded $50,000? I'm like, oh, no, we didn't. I said, well, great, do a small purchase, reach out and get 3 quotes. I said, but before you do, just look back and take a look at what you spent last year. Well, they actually did spend beyond $50,000. So they couldn't do a small purchase. They had to do a formal bid. So that saved them from further getting into trouble because they exceeded the 50,000 without a formal bid. That can become a finding. So looking back at what you did in the previous year, what are you going to do in the future year, and doing that analysis is really important. So soliciting. This is a request for something you want or need. You're documenting your needs, whether it's for services or for products, food products, non-food products, whatever it is. An effective solicitation will provide detailed specifications, but not overly detailed. So if you create a specification that is so tightly written down to the smallest detail of whatever product you want, that it only captures one response, you haven't allowed for that open and fair competition. But if you write it so loosely and so generic, you may get so many responses that now that becomes difficult to evaluate. I saw that happen this past year. Another co-op received 42 responses on a solicitation. I think it was right at the first of COVID, trying to find individually wrapped products. And it was too much to even try to award because there were just so many responses. So writing a specification is kind of a fine balance. Provide enough details so that you're capturing the products you want, but it leaves it open enough to capture other products that maybe you're not even aware of that could be considered and fairly evaluated against the product that you're actually wanting. Obviously, you want to use an appropriate procurement method based on those purchasing thresholds, and you want to clearly describe your deliverables. Where is it to be delivered? Multiple campuses, one campus? Do you have a warehouse? When? What times during the day? Are there nighttime key drops allowed? So you want to clearly describe all of that in your deliverables. When we're talking about services, maybe there are initial fees that if it's a one service call, there's an hour fee. If it goes beyond that hour, what does that look like? It's going to be part of your specification or part of your request and bid pricing. The deliverables, could it be a weekend service call? Is that allowed? So you want to be really clear in your needs. That's what this is. It's telling the bidders, hey, here are the products or services we want, and this is how we want them. All right. When we talk about specifications and estimated quantities, this is a requirement actually. You must include estimated quantities. You have to let the bidders know how many of these products are you wanting. Obviously, in your forecasting and that planning, you've already got this laid out. You have the products you plan to purchase, you've entered your estimated quantities, and you did that cost analysis. So you see, all this is building on top of each other. And so you've already got this piece done when it comes to writing your solicitation or doing your small purchase. This is how much we plan to purchase. Now, I will tell you that what you put down in that bid is considered a commitment to purchase that amount. There is actually regulation in the ARM that states if you have solicited and awarded a vendor for, say, an XYZ product, and you said you're going to purchase 200 cases, that was your estimated quantities, you must see through the purchase of those 200 cases before you can go out for another bid for the same product with another situation. Because you basically said to the awarded vendor, hey, yeah, we're going to purchase this many cases of these chicken nuggets or whatever that product is. So it is seen as a commitment to purchase. Often pricing is based on quantities, and I probably can't preach this enough. In my co-op, often I will say I feel like our bid is diluted with our big commercial bid because there's so many same like items that I feel like maybe there are 2 or 3 really great quality ones that don't have the volume backing them to get the best price. And this is how it works. You want to try to consolidate the number of products down to the best products so that you've got the highest volume and you get the best price. That's the goal. Accuracy is important. You don't want to overshoot how many you're going to purchase because that's not fair to the vendor. And if your quantities are seen as a commitment, some vendors may try to hold you to that. They may say, look, you said you're going to buy 1,000 cases. We priced on 1,000 cases. We expect you to buy 1,000 cases. We've produced them. We brought them in. They're yours. So you have to be careful. So that estimated quantities, again, a fine balance. You want to be truthful. You don't want to undercut yourself, because guess what? You've got a contract value that you can't exceed. If you said, we're going to buy 500 cases, and by the end of the school year, you purchased 1,000 cases, guess what? TDA is going to look at that as you didn't procure for the second 500 cases that you purchased. You said you're going to purchase 500, you estimated, you got a price, you bought, but then you bought 500 more. Where's your procurement for those other 500 cases? So be very mindful when you're estimating your quantities as you're going through that process of forecasting and setting up your solicitation with your quantities. The other thing about a solicitation, and we're going to do a deep dive into each procurement method and talk a little more details, but this past June 2021, TDA did change. In a formal solicitation, you can now include 4 consecutive single-year renewal options. It used to be 3, which made a total contract life 4 years if you renewed. Now it can be 5 years. You've got initial 1 year and now 4 single-year consecutive renewal options. So I was personally happy to see that because when it comes to really large formal procurements, it's a lot of work and it's not something you want to do every year. All right. Any questions, Lana? I'm kind of rolling through. Okay.
Yep. We have one. They want to know if they can purchase less than what they bid. If they, let's say they bid 200 cases and they only purchase 100, is that okay?
But you need to probably question what made you think you would purchase the 200 that you put in your bid. And you also have to think beyond your needs and what's going on with the processors or the manufacturers. So I'll give you an example. I've got a school and they forecasted, X number of a product. The processor actually produced that number of cases of product, and now we're trying to get it into Labatt. And so, if you put it out there, hey, I'm going to buy 200 cases, and if it's a distributor or some vendor that's going to turn around to a manufacturer and say, hey, we need 200 cases of that product. I've got a school that's awarded us. They've said they're going to buy 200. They're going to bring that in. Now your distributor has purchased 200 cases for you and you only buy 100. Well, who's responsible for the other 100 cases? You initially said you were going to buy the 200 and now you're only buying 100. So when I say it's a very fine balance, you have to think beyond your immediate circle because you've affected a lot of different people outside your immediate circle by estimating the 200. So it's just a mindful thing. I know sometimes, I see schools, they'll estimate a large amount and then for some reason the product doesn't work out. I never recommend putting down you're going to plan to purchase something if you have not at least tested it at the school or sampled it yourself and you think your kids are going to like it. If it's something that's new and you're not sure, don't estimate a lot of quantities. Get some samples in. If it's great and accepted, plan for it the next year. Or just try to get your sampling and testing in before bids go out so that, we tasted that new product. I think the kids are going to love it. We tested a few students. I know sometimes student testing can be good or bad, depends on the sampling of students you pull in for testing. Sometimes brokers will be willing to come up to your school and do a cutting with several different products and maybe pull in, students that way. I've even heard in the past, maybe not right now in the pandemic, but in the past, there were some companies that would come in and just, one of your campuses serve a lunch with that product to see if the kids liked it and took it. So there are lots of ways that you can look at products and sample products. Food shows, have a broker bring something, ask for a sample be delivered. Just test it out before you commit to something. Now, obviously, things can happen. Maybe you did plan for 200 and now your participation has dropped. Here's what I have to say, that communication is key. If you foresee that maybe you thought you're going to need those 200 cases and you get going in the year and all of a sudden you're like, oh my gosh, I'm only going to need 100. Communicate to your distributor. Hey, you know what? We forecasted 200. We're not going to meet that. We're only going to need 100 because they're buying in increments. And so that way they can say, okay, well, school ABC, they're not going to need all those. So we don't need to put in a purchase order for that. And if there's anything that came out of this pandemic is that this one saving grace is communication. The more we communicate with each other between co-op and district and vendors and manufacturers and processors, the better off we all are. We're getting more of what we want. Nothing is being purchased and sitting and going bad, and that companies have to eat that profit. So just if you forecast and you over forecast, come back with better communication. Even if you put it out there, you can always reel it back in. I mean, no one's going to come and, fine you for that, but it's just being mindful. Any other, did that answer the question? Probably more so than what you wanted.
And we got a couple more. One is what happens if we estimate we should process so many cases of an item and then we order those cases and they can't be filled, such as in COVID times?
So obviously we're in an unprecedented time and no one could foresee what was going to happen this year. I actually feel like it's worse than it was last year. TDA has been very flexible. And when we saw some pretty extreme pricing increases come through or downsizing of SKUs, that products that you forecasted and banked pounds on, now all of a sudden they've been discontinued. Now you're sitting on these pounds and the processor doesn't have other products that you really want or that you can use or need. TDA has been very flexible to help you trade those pounds for another processor's pounds. So a great example was Pilgrim's really did a downsizing of the number of SKUs they offered to the point where it was so small. And we had several districts that were like, we just want to move our pounds to Tyson. And so TDA was willing to do that. They are still being flexible thinkers around this. And so if this is happening, I did just see something come through from one of my districts on a JTN product, literally up to the last minute, about to get her delivery in about 5 days. And they shot her an email and said, guess what? We discontinued this product. We'll send you what little we had. At least they communicated before the delivery showed up and her product wasn't there. So we can say great, but it would have been nice to know a little sooner, but maybe the processor didn't know. I know some of these processors are having meetings right now. It's just a hard one, but keep in mind, there are some flexibilities and you can lean on those. And also if you're in a purchasing co-op like MRPC, we will do our best to try to work with you to get things switched around, maybe a school trade or whatever we can do to help. One thing I can say is that many of you took advantage of the bonus pounds. Many of you have seen a lot of more money come back into your accounts. And I know TDA has said it, but if you can try to relax around the amount of entitlement or your pounds that, oh my gosh, I got to spend all my entitlement because that's what we've said for years. Oh my gosh, I need to use all my pounds because that's what we've said for years. Right now, USDA's opinion and mantra is order and spend and use what you need. Don't worry if you didn't use it all. Don't worry if you didn't spend it all. Sometimes we can't spend it all because that's too much. We don't need that much. Sometimes things are disappearing and now we got to get something else. So do your best during this time to try to stay calm through all that and let us help you and, know there are some flexibilities.
The next question is very similar. It just says if quantities look to go over, should we do emergency procurement, especially during the pandemic?
So it depends on by how much. It also depends on the bid. So in my solicitations, I have that 10% flexibility written in for additional products, over purchasing, new products, whatever. If you've got some language in your bid that allows you to have additional products, it may not hurt you. 10% may not even be what you're going to spend on more of what you thought you needed. Now, if we're talking 2 times or 3 times more than what you put in the bid, then yeah, you might want to do emergency procurement. I'm going to do a little deeper dive on emergency procurement later on in this presentation, but make sure it's a true emergency. that's the thing, just be careful that what you're claiming to be emergency procurement really is an emergency purchase. So, all right.
So-
Any other questions, Lana?
Yeah, the last one we have right now says, how do you handle situations like small schools who prefer to scratch cook, but the volume is low? Will you still add those to the bid? Their example is raw brisket, quinoa, wogs, lentils, some of those odd items that most school districts are not using.
Right. So what we're doing this year is obviously I'll take any and all new item request, even if it's a small volume. I know a lot of schools are moving towards scratch cooking as we enter whatever it is, phase 3 or level 3 or whatever they call it, of sodium, which is going to end up killing us all because of lack of sodium. So things can be placed on bids, but what we've seen trending since the start of COVID is that distributors, and I'm not just talking about Labatt, I've seen Cisco do it, I've seen Gordon's do it, they're starting to really want to see volume backing the products they're stocking. Now, I'll put it on the bid if we can get it, because maybe other schools are using that distributor and they're also adding to the volume that's being brought in, or maybe half the warehouse at Labatt is for retail. And so maybe some of those things are already being sold to retail. Now we can add it to our school bid. Absolutely. I can't make promises, because what we've seen in the past a year and a half now plus is that the products that had the low volume are not being brought in. Labatt is not stocking them. Gordon's is not stocking them. They're bringing in the products where there is volume backing those purchases. And that is probably not what you want to hear, but you can certainly try. That's all I can say. You can always put it out there. And if you get a bid price back, awesome. We put it on the bid. If it comes back with no bid, that means the distributor's not going to bring it in at that low of a volume. And that might be something that you as a school would have to do, procure on your own if you can find it someplace else. But we'll do our best. All co-ops do their best, try to get what their schools want.
That's it for now.
Oh, good questions, everyone. Very good questions. Okay, moving on to awarding a solicitation. Obviously, you're going to get all these bid responses in, hopefully not too many. 2 to 3, maybe 4 is a good number. It's manageable. It's easy to evaluate an award and can compare products, look at all the different things around services, if that's what it is. So you're going to evaluate the bid or the proposal, and you're going to choose a winner, and you may even choose two winners. You may have a backup winner if you've written your solicitation that way. 2 important elements when you're awarding a contract is, number 1, you want to award a responsive and responsible contractor. Now, what does that mean? Well, did they complete all the documents, signed in all the right places, checked all the right boxes? Did they submit their proposal or their bid on time? And did they include all the required documents? So we ask for health and safety certificates. We ask for financial documents showing that they are financially responsible and in good standing, whether it's a letter from their bank, or it's a credit report, or it's a financial audit score, something that shows us their business is doing okay. Nothing worse than having an awarded vendor disappear mid-year because they just closed their doors. They didn't make it. Had that happen one year with the produce vendor. Some of you on this call may remember that. I couldn't even find a person to call me back. It was horrible. So you don't want that to happen. So you want to be making sure that whoever you award, they checked all the boxes, they submitted everything, and they look like they're going to be a responsible contractor. Sometimes there are awards that need to occur that require TDA pre-award review or even approval. And we'll look at some of those, but I'll give you an example. This year I had a bid that went out and only got 1 response. And so I did my due diligence and researched the heck out of it. Why did I get 1 response? I'd reached out, literally personally invited 3 major vendors, and only 1 responded. And in my research, I learned that 1 vendor just had to back out. They were having so many issues with drivers and this and that and the other. They couldn't even bid. they're restructuring, they're redoing whatever they're doing. The other one just made the decision to not bid because they went for 2 other solicitations. That was a personal choice. And so TDA was like, hey, you did what you could, you know, you did everything right, document it. So I documented it and I awarded our single responder. So there are times when TDA will need to review or, you know, even approve awarding. There are other reasons why TDA approves awards, you know, sole source and some other things. We're going to talk about that a little deeper. But you want to evaluate and you want to be fair in your evaluation and you want to have a rubric, even if it's a small purchase acquisition, which we'll go over a little more closely here in a little while. Few other things why TDA might conduct a pre-award review. Is it, like I said, the non-competitive proposal. Maybe you want to limit an area of competition. Maybe if you put it out to the entire state or the entire, you know, country, you're going to get back too many responses and you have a need to limit it. Or maybe you're remote and you know that if you put it further out, it's going to have a huge price increase. So there are some various reasons why you might want to limit the area of competition. I mentioned sole source and of course non-competitive. So there's just a few reasons why TDA might need to conduct that pre-award review. All right, then managing. 4th phase of procurement. Obviously, you're gonna have to manage the awarded contract. And I will tell you, many aspects of management will keep you very busy. Obviously, you estimated a quantity. Is your awarded vendor able to provide the quantity that you forecasted? That's key. You said, hey, I need the 200 cases, but I'm only getting, you know, 150. Where's the other 50? You responded, you gave me a price, you said you can meet the quantities. Timeliness. In your deliverables, part of the solicitation, you said, we're going to have you delivered between 6 a.m. and 2 p.m., Monday through Friday. Well, are they showing up at 2:30 when everyone's gone home? I feel a lot of you shaking your head. Yes. Are they coming early, 5:30, when no one's even there yet? So timeliness is part of the management. Location. Now, some of you are probably scratching your head, like, what does that mean? I had a district one year, many years ago, and we were going into a new bid season, and the director asked me, will they deliver the bread to my campus, to my district? I said, well, yes, but you're using this bid right now. She said, yeah, but they don't deliver to my campus. They drop it off at the local 7-Eleven 5 miles down the road. We're at the end of the school year. She had been driving 5 miles down the road to get the bread at the local 7-Eleven every week because the driver just didn't want to drive down that 5-mile road to get it to her campus. Well, we got that cleared up right away, took care of it. So are they delivering to the right location or to the location? Sometimes drivers will drop 2 campuses deliveries at 1 campus, which means now you got to take the second campus's cases of food down to that campus. This is not acceptable. This is not what was in your solicitation. So be mindful that, yeah, they're adhering to the terms and conditions of the bid award. Specifications. You wrote out the specification of the product that you wanted. Are they delivering the products that you specified? Now, I know many of you are seeing subs and shortages. It's a crazy time, but in a normal year, companies should not have trouble providing what you specified. If they do, they should be providing adequate substitutions. Now, we're not in a normal year. We are in a very crazy year, and I've heard some pretty crazy things. Again, communication is king here. When you're getting subs, the vendor should be communicating with you. Hey, we're gonna have to sub that. Sometimes vendors think they're getting in that 5,000 cases of a product, and they end up getting 50% of what they ordered from the manufacturer, and they don't even know that till it shows up at their delivery warehouse. You know, truck backs in, they unload, and like, where's our other 500 cases or 5,000 cases? This is a lack of communication between that manufacturer and the distributor. So, you know, communication, if it's broken anywhere down the chain, can cause all kinds of issues for those on the receiving end. But I know that our distributor and all the other distributors are happy to communicate with you in a way that works for you. And every school district is different. Some of you want a text message. Some of you want an email. Some of you want to receive a phone call. Communicate with your vendors. Hey, if you're going to sub, just please text me, because I want the opportunity to say no or yes to that, your idea of a subbed item. Nothing wrong with that. Set it up, get that communication going. And I know it's a hard year right now. So try to be flexible. You're going to hate me for that word later. All right. Section 3. We're going to talk about each procurement method. So we've got two sides. We've got informal, which includes your micro purchase and your small purchase. And then we've got formal, which includes your competitive sealed bid or an invitation for bids, an IFB, competitive proposals, which is a request for proposal, or a non-competitive proposal. We're going to deep dive into each of these with a little bit of into the weeds about micro purchase. Before I get started, any other questions, Lana?
Not at this time.
Okay, moving on. All right. So currently we already talked about, we've got the state level small purchase or simplified acquisition threshold set at $50,000. Now, after you've done your cost analysis, you discover that your contract value, what you're going to purchase, is greater than $50,000. You have to use a formal procurement method. If your cost is going to be less than or equal to $50,000, you may use an informal procurement method. So let's talk about the first informal procurement method. This is a micro purchase. How we love this word. All right. If you're not aware, now you will be. This past June, TDA made a very big change to the definition and regulations around micro purchasing in the state of Texas. It primarily came out of kitchen repair and kitchen service cost at the districts they were reviewing. Right now, as it is stated in the ARM, this is in section 17, micro purchase is an aggregate purchase amount or the total cost of the same category of products and services purchased over the CE's fiscal year. As such, the cost of the same category of products or services purchased using the micro purchase method is cumulative across the fiscal year and cannot exceed the $10,000 threshold. Same category, cumulative, never existed until June of 2021 in the definition of a micro purchase. It used to be a single transaction that was seen as a non-routine, unplanned purchase that didn't exceed the $10,000. But what happened was TDA started seeing lots of schools using the micro purchase as it was defined in the ARM at the current time for kitchen repairs or kitchen parts, kitchen services, kitchen repair services. And even those that were spreading the wealth, as it was stated in the ARM, if you're going to use micro purchase, you must spread the wealth. You can't just keep going back to the same vendor. Even those that spread the wealth between 6 and 8 vendors exceeded 10,000 with any one single vendor. And when you looked at the cumulative spent on kitchen repair parts, kitchen repair services, it was well beyond the 10,000 and often beyond the 50,000. Now, micro purchase is not intended to be the primary method of procurement, obviously. It can be awarded without soliciting competitive pricing. With a micro purchase, you go and you buy. You still must distribute equitably among qualified suppliers. However, you do need to follow through the cost analysis of what you're about to buy before you go and make a micro purchase. And the reason is that in your cost analysis, if you're racing out, let's say we're talking about office supplies, and we're going to look at some examples right out of the ARM here in a minute. And you're like, yep, we know we're going to buy, printer paper now. We know we need a new computer. We know we're going to have some ink, but we're not going to buy all that together. But throughout the year, we're going to buy all these different things. Go ahead and do your cost analysis based on every single planned purchase, even if they're months apart, because office supplies is now a category. And if you exceed 10,000 cumulative throughout the year, on a variety of office supplies, you set yourself up for a finding for not properly procuring. And maybe you needed to do a small purchase acquisition and award an office supply company, and then you just go and buy up to $50,000. If you're going to spend beyond that, you need a formal procurement method. So be very mindful of your categories. That's new. So how do we determine categories? Okay, this is how it's defined in the ARM. Categories are a descriptor or high-level definition of a type of product or service, and a single category may have many different types of items that will be included in the aggregate total cost. These are examples right out of the ARM: office supplies, produce, janitorial supplies, equipment repairs, uniforms. Short list. There are many other categories. Like I said, you must still distribute equitably if you can get away with a micro purchase. And one thing you can't do is you cannot apply any local or state regulation that limits the distribution of purchases to one vendor. So you really have to be mindful that you are spreading that wealth amongst many vendors. Just be very careful with your produce. It's not difficult to award a produce vendor. You can get, when you go out for bid on produce, fresh produce, it is a weekly market price, but you can ask the vendors who submit, what was your pricing last year during this month and during this month? And then you can compare pricing. Often a vendor may trend towards more expensive produce. And we actually see that in my co-op. I've got a vendor that he typically trends towards a pricier fresh produce. But then you can award on, are there delivery fees? Are there minimum delivery, requirements? Is there a fuel surcharge? Quality of sampled produce, variety that's offered. There are many different things that you can base your award on to a produce vendor without actually having a fixed price, because you're not going to get that. Maybe on a few items you can get a fixed price in produce, but for the most part, it's a weekly market price. But just be very careful with your produce purchasing. So I mentioned forecasting. Here we are back at forecasting. You just want to make sure that you're looking at your whole year now for categories so that you don't get tripped up. Maybe you're thinking, oh, I'm not going to exceed $10,000. And then halfway through the year, you're at your $10,000 mark. Well, now you can't purchase anymore until you go out for a bid, because you're going to go beyond that $10,000 threshold. So you guys know what you kind of spend. Look back, look at your historical data. What did I spend last year? Am I expecting to spend the same or more this year because I have more needs? Possibly. Well, and especially because things are getting more expensive. So you're definitely, if that's one thing I can say, you're definitely going to spend more this year and more next year than what you probably ever spent, sadly. All right, let's look at some examples. These are right out of the ARM, and cost analysis. I want to talk about that a little bit, because while a cost analysis is not required for a micro purchase, it's a good idea when you think you're teetering on that 10,000 mark, or if you have self-certified and you're teetering on that 50,000 mark, or 40,000 or 30,000, whatever you self-certify to. So I think it's just always good to know your cost up front. That way, you're not about to make a misstep with an inappropriate procurement method. So do your research. Acceptable documentation for cost analysis when it comes to what you think is going to be a micro purchase. Newspaper advertisements from various suppliers, online advertisements, written notes from discussions with vendors, or a signed off, hey, this is what it's going to cost you, company letterhead or a note, whatever, or just documentation of price from various suppliers. Maybe you've seen something through an awarded bid with a co-op, or maybe you, went to buy board or to tips somewhere where you've seen, a cost of something. So just make sure you're documenting your cost analysis, even if it's for a micro purchase, because documentation is king always, and it will save you every time. All right, so let's talk about examples out of the ARM. This is about a single purchase or transaction for computer paper, ink, cartridges, paper towels from the same supplier, a variety of products from the same supplier. So Oh, that is not right. I forgot to change that heading. This is about produce. So sorry. I will update my presentation. This is about a single purchase or transaction of fresh produce. So the CE bought $137 and some change in a variety of fresh products: apricots, figs, almonds, fennel. They're having a tasting event. They bought some clove. This is a one-time annual purchase. They're not going to buy these products again. This is a one-time tasting event. If the tasting goes well, the CE is going to menu some of these items in the next school year. So, I mentioned that earlier. Do some tastings during the school year for the upcoming school year. So their invoice for all these products, all the items were listed on the same invoice, and the cost was paid in one payment. The aggregate purchase amount for this micro purchase was $137. This is not going to become a routine planned purchase for this year. They're just sampling for an upcoming school year, a one-off. Another example is a delivery of a single purchase for several items over a period of time. Here's my office supply computer. That's where my heading needs to go on this slide right here. So the CE orders 6 computers, 6 printers, 90 printer cartridge refills, paper, surge cord protectors. Their total on this single order is $8,826 and some change. Now, at the time they ordered, those printer cartridges are not in stock, but everything else can be delivered, and it does get delivered. So CE, the computers, the paper, the protectors, all delivered the day after the order was placed. They get an invoice for what was delivered. Now, these other remaining items are delivered a week later, and they get a second invoice for those items. Now, even though the CE is going to pay 2 separate invoices, all the items were ordered in a single transaction. And that single transaction amount did not exceed the $10,000 threshold, or if you've got something higher, didn't exceed your higher threshold for micro purchase. So this can qualify as a micro purchase. Now, if you plan on ordering more products later in the year in this same category, I would say this would not be good as a micro purchase. So this is where your planning comes in for that forecasting for the whole year. While you may have needed these computers and printers right away when school started, bam, I've got to have this new setup. But, oh, we know we're going to be buying some more office supplies similar to these products later. They're going to take us well over 10,000 or maybe well over 30,000 because we did a self-certify, and 30,000 is our micro threshold. So be mindful of what it looks like for the whole year. And especially when you're having to replace computers and new items that might take you over the 10,000. And maybe this is a one-time purchase for all these new computers, and next year you won't have this $8,800 because of all these computers and printers. But in a normal year, you're coming close to 10,000 just with your everyday needs with paper and ink and all that good fun stuff. So that forecasting and planning is super important here. All right, let's talk about kitchen repairs and parts purchased and annual aggregate. So this was a really hotbed topic this past year, I will say. And part of it was you don't know what you're going to need until whatever it is going to break. And now you're in an emergency. You're calling your maintenance staff, or you're calling some kind of a repair service, whoever can get to you on that day or the next day, whatever that looks like. They're emergency repairs. No one knows what the emergency is going to be. However, if you were to look back historically at the previous 2 years, how many emergency repairs did you make at any one of your campuses? So now kind of takes it out of the realm that, well, it was an emergency at the time, but you were expecting to have some kind of an emergency during the school year. And you were probably expecting to spend upwards of X amount of dollars in the school year on these unanticipated repairs, but you are anticipating some type of repair somewhere. Many of you could look around and say, wow, okay, those pipes are really old, that sink, we're seeing it, have this go on, rust or a crack here, whatever. We're probably going to need to replace that or fix that in this upcoming year. Your kitchens, what's going on in your kitchens. So most of you are not going to get away with kitchen repair parts or services for micro purchasing. Do your due diligence. Look back at what you did last year. Look back at the previous year. How much did you spend between all the different vendors you utilized? And did it total up to be beyond $10,000? If it did, you're going to need to do a small purchase. If it didn't, and you're looking around your kitchens, you're going, well, yeah, we replaced all that last year. You probably won't spend more than $10,000. Then you're okay. But keep in mind, all these different parts are same like parts. They're all kitchen repair parts, kitchen repair services. They're all going to fall under that category of kitchen repair service, whether it's someone to come look at your freezer because that's out, or some kind of a timer is not working, or someone who's going to fix the sink pipes, or someone who's going to do something with the dishwasher. It's a kitchen repair service. It's going to fall into that same category. Most of you are going to need to do a small purchase acquisition. You're going to spend up to $50,000 in the annual cumulative aggregate amount, or you're going to need to do a formal bid. What's nice about a formal bid is that you can award one or two companies. One is the initial winner, one is a backup if the winner can't get to you fast enough, and you've got a backup awarded, and they're clear that they are a backup. And then you just keep calling that same company. Then you don't have to track and worry, oh my gosh, did I call them last time? Do I need to call another one? I've got to spread the wealth. This is a micro purchase. So it really does kind of alleviate some of the stress around when these things happen. Just be mindful, that if you do a formal bid, guess what? You can renew that for 4 years and keep using that same repair service. And now a lot of stress is taken off your plate because you're not calling 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 different companies to come in and service and having to get that quote every time. You know what their price is. You awarded them as a vendor. It actually can alleviate some of the stress off your plate. It might mean doing a solicitation that captures bids from different aspects of repair service companies. So maybe you're capturing bids for freezer and refrigerator and other various things. You can get a list of parts that they offer a discount off of the parts list. And some of you are using in-house maintenance staff, and that's great. So all they're doing is they are, you give them a call. Hey, I've got something leaking. This needs to be repaired. They come in, they assess the situation. They need parts. They go and they buy. Many of you are thinking, how do I award, a Home Depot or a Lowe's or whatever? These companies are not going to respond to a bid, but there are national part supply companies out there that will bid. And you can always have a backup situation where if you get a list of parts with the least pricing and your awarded vendor cannot get the parts to you fast enough, you've got a backup. So it gets a little tricky. Yes, I know, and it's not fun, but this is where you have to do your due diligence and anticipate your repairs, look at the historical amount of purchases you made, and really question, can you get away with a micro purchase on this stuff, or do you need to do something a little more appropriate and maybe possibly formal bid? Any questions on this from anyone, Lana?
Yes, we have a couple.
Okay.
The first one is they want to know, does the district get to set the categories for micro purchase, or is there a complete list somewhere?
I've not seen a list from TDA. I think, they're same like categories, and that's verbiage in the ARM or same type items. So, just I would say create your list, document your list in your procurement procedures manual. And if you're not sure if TDA would be accepting of that, email them, email their procurement department and ask. Put your list together and shoot it over to them and just simply ask, would this be acceptable? Our purchases in this category and purchases in this category, this is what we would be purchasing. And then they can come back and tell you yes or no. but I have not seen a list from TDA, so there's nothing out there in writing.
Okay. The next thing is, if it's a formal, can you list the name of equipment or have
Yes.
to list the individual parts?
So if you're doing a formal bid, you can always list what's called a recommended manufacturer and a recommended product code. You have to use the word recommended or equal manufacturer, recommended or equal product code, so that you are allowing for that open and fair competition. And make sure that you've created an evaluation matrix that allows for, if there's a vendor you're unfamiliar with that offers a brand that you're unfamiliar with, that you can, give yourself time in your evaluation time frame to properly evaluate and look at the differences. But yes, you can do that. Now, if you're going out, and we're going to get deeper into this in formal bids, there is, if you go out just for an IFB, invitation for bid, you can reach out to 3 different companies. If you know the equipment brand you want, well, maybe there are several companies that sell that exact brand and that exact model. And now it comes down to, who are you awarding? It's based on who has it at the best price and can get it delivered and installed in the time frame needed, and maybe some type of a maintenance service comes or along with that, installation. So there are several things you can look at when it comes down to a specific brand you want.
So if we don't advertise in a newspaper, but use active purchasing co-op vendors and get multiple competitive quotes at the time of each purchase, are they in compliance?
For formal, no. Buy board tips, all great for a micro purchase or a small purchase acquisition where you're getting 3 quotes and you can use those sites for one of your sources. If you're going to do a formal, if you have to do a formal bid, you need to do a formal bid on your own.
And I would just like to add to that real quick. We did have one of our CEs got caught this year on their formal bid, did not get advertised in the newspaper. The person thought they had done their due diligence. It didn't go to newspaper, and they discounted that entire contract, and general fund had to pay back close to 200,000. So,
oh my gosh, wow.
Please advertise, follow that.
Yeah, keep in mind, buy board is just not, all those types of co-ops are not good for a formal bid. Now, if you have joined a co-op and you have provided estimated quantities and that co-op has gone out for bid for equipment and you've got estimated quantities attached to that, that's a different story. But if you're just going to buy board, did you submit estimated quantities to them? No, you did not. Do they have all the documents? They advertise? How did they even know how many were to be purchased? If they estimated 100 of that piece of equipment and all 100 have been purchased, how many more are they selling above and beyond what was properly procured? Very dangerous road to take when it comes to formal procurement required. Just stay away from those sites. There's nothing wrong with going to that site or tips and looking up some vendors that offer the equipment you want. And then when you put together your formal solicitation, you send an invitation to those companies to bid your solicitation. Nothing wrong with that. Absolutely. It's a great way to find companies to reach out to get bid responses. But they need to answer to your own solicitation that you've released and advertised appropriately.
Our next question is, what about if you rent a dishwasher and there's monthly fees from that company? We've used the same company since I started, and the school district uses a fire safety company that does all of the, I don't know, their question ends there.
So it's talking about a leased piece of equipment?
Yes.
So obviously there was some point where hopefully the school went out for bid for a leased piece of equipment and got some bid responses and went with the best value or the best price and awarded that vendor for that leased piece of equipment. So now that's part of your award. You've got this monthly lease that you're paying.
Yes, we had a very similar question a couple of weeks ago in a training, and same thing, like at some point that had to be procured correctly. And you're going to
Yes.
have to provide that documentation in a review.
And if you can't find it, this might be a good time to consider going out for a new bid for a leased piece of equipment.
Yes. Okay, can you have a discount off manufacturer? I know that you can't do cost plus.
The only way you can have a discount off is if they can show you the list of products, the list price, and then next column is your discount off of that list price and your end price. So you have to think about it is, how can you award based off of discount off if you don't see what's the beginning price and what's your discount? There's no way of knowing what your cost is. And so would that cost be reasonable? Is that cost the best cost compared to someone else who may have submitted a hard fixed bid price? If you don't know the initial cost prior to your discount, then you really have no idea what you're about to pay. And that's unallowable.
Okay. Can you use the informal process until you anticipate you may exceed the threshold with a particular vendor at some point in the year?
So what I would say is that maybe, I mean, I know there are situations when if you planned or at least looked at what are your potential needs, you know, for the upcoming year, and you don't think you're going to exceed that micro purchase threshold, and then you end up exceeding it. Surprise, you need to procure for what you are all of a sudden going to buy beyond that 10,000. I would say be careful of continually doing that, because that might be seen as circumventing a more appropriate procurement method. So if you're trucking along doing micro purchases, it's super easy. You're just going and you're buying from whomever, right? And then all of a sudden you're like, oh wait, okay, I reached the 10,000. Okay, time to do a different bid. That might get you into a finding, because it might be seen as circumventing appropriate procurement method. Can accidents happen where you thought you're going to be okay with micro and it ends up you're not? Yes, that can happen, but I would make that a rare occurrence, because that phase of procurement is planning, forecasting, looking at what are your needs. And really, that's probably, it's a tough thing to do right now. And I do understand. Just don't make it a habit, I guess I would say. We get caught off guard sometimes with that. Absolutely. Especially during a pandemic year.
We have someone that would like to know if the MRPC could put out a bid for kitchen repairs and equipment parts.
It is in the back of my brain, amongst many other things. My team will yell at me because a lot of things are in my brain and not on paper. So yes, it's something I have thought seriously about, and something I'm entertaining for school year 22-23. Absolutely. Especially after this past year, last year with these reviews and the intensity around these purchases, it was not fun for most districts. And so obviously I saw a void in the bids being offered, and there's got to be a solution. Absolutely.
Okay, so I've got a couple more over here in the chat. One says, so many items we don't know the quantity we are going to purchase in a single year, especially parts and equipment. How can you do a small or formal purchase when you aren't planning on purchasing more of something, but then unexpectedly you need more? How do you do a small bid for the repairs that will possibly happen? What is it you're procuring? This is where it gets really confusing. Would you just solicit hourly rates? And I thought you couldn't do % off cost.
Okay, so I heard two different things there. So we're only talking about parts, and I've heard this is probably the biggest complaint from schools around this whole new annual aggregate and parts. How do you know which parts you need? Well, I say collect pricing on as many parts possible, if you can. And it's a guesstimate. Your estimated quantities, especially when it comes to things like this, is a guesstimate, but you probably could look back and for a couple of years and go, okay, my maintenance team, my gosh, they had to go out and buy, PVC pipes, 1 inch, 2 inch, half inch, whatever, like several times. We spent X amount on that. You do your best guess on that if it's just parts. Now, if we are talking about services that also, obviously, if they're going to make a service call, that company is going to provide the parts to fix whatever is broken or in need of repair. So when you are awarding, you're awarding the contract for their service fees, and if they can, reach you in the right amount of time. So when you are capturing pricing on services with kitchen repair, you want to ask for what's your first hour price, because they're going to have a minimum, whether they're there for 15 minutes, 30 minutes, 45 minutes, or an hour, there's going to be initial fee. Maybe it's $100. Then the clock starts ticking after that initial hour in 15-minute increments most of the time. Maybe their fee is now $30 for each additional 15 minutes. Then you want to find out, and that would be a normal service call, a non-emergency. Then you want to get a price on what if you need them there ASAP in a 12-hour window, a 24-hour window, a 72-hour window, or after hours and weekends, because they're probably going to have a different service charge if it's after hours or on the weekend. So you want to capture that pricing, because this is what you're evaluating. So you may get a bid response from 2 or 3 repair service companies, and one company may be $100 with $15, per 15 minutes after that first hour. One may be at 95 or 90, but now they're 25 for each 15 minutes after that. It could be all over the board, but it allows you to look at, okay, what's going to be the best value. Along with that service bid, they can submit a list of parts that might be needed for repairs. Maybe they're going to Home Depot. That's where they buy their parts. If you call on them, they're going to use Home Depot. Here's the list of parts, maybe a list price, but they'll give you 5 or 10% off list price because they're getting it at a contractor price. So you can ask for that as an additional submission to the services side of it. So you're awarding on services, but you're also going to consider, okay, I'm getting all these parts and well, these 2 vendors, both are $90 for the first hour, same for 15 minutes. Everything seems to be the same, but one vendor is offering 10% off list price for Home Depot, and the other one's only offering 5%. So maybe this vendor A is a better deal, all included. So you are allowed to do that. Hopefully that makes sense.
Okay, so we do have a couple more that have come through. One I did answer. They wanted to know, when they have equipment that is specific to a certain company, let's say an ice cream, they have to stock that ice cream. The contract says if the machine needs repairs, it goes through that. I said that's sole source. There is a form on Square Meals for that.
Yes, that is sole source, because typically that piece of equipment is under warranty as long as the company services it and maintains it. But the minute you pull in some other company to service it, you kill your warranty. So that is a true sole source, and you do have to get approval on that.
Then we also have one that says, who are these national parts companies? Can a list be provided? If your district will not allow you to use a credit card for purchasing, then you can't use internet-based companies and you become limited. If you reach out to 10 companies to apply for your local vendor list and only 2 companies respond, then you are limited. Companies get tired of providing quotes for parts when you never actually purchase anything from them, and you wind up using the same company all the time. Many companies do not want to deal with using the old purchase order method.
I have no fix for that. I don't know who the national parts companies are. I see trucks and stuff. I can't think of the names. I will be finding out, and I will be figuring out how do we get something awarded, even with local, like the Home Depots or Lowe's. I'm about to dive in after commodities, get my commodity bid off the plate. to figure out all of this. You know, if you're looking back, and most of you, you're going to exceed the 10,000. You're going to have to do either a small purchase acquisition or, you know, some kind of a formal bid. If the companies, if they've got a catalog list of their parts that show the pricing, and if awarded, they're going to provide you with a 5 or 10% discount. As long as you can see the price and apply the discount so you see the end price that you can now evaluate, that might be easier for them instead of trying to provide you with some kind of special bid price. You know, maybe if awarded, they're willing to give you, you know, 5% off this category, 2% off this category, but they got to show you the price so that you can calculate your end price. So that you can see, yeah, okay, that part's going to cost us this. If you can come up with some kind of a guesstimate for the number of parts, you know, you need to put something in there for estimated quantities. And that literally, when it comes to this kind of a bid, it literally is a guessing game. And you just do your best. That's all you can do. That's all you can do with this.
Okay, so our next one says, and this brings up a great point, we have a commodity code for grocery foods. During the year, we may exceed the 150,000 from Labatt via the co-op. Then we spend 200 from Walmart and 200 for Brookshire's for emergency needs. They've exceeded the 50,000 annual threshold on the category. How is that going to be reviewed, and what should we do for those two occasional needs?
Okay, so let me get this clear. You're purchasing through an awarded bid as Labatt. You spent 150,000, but you spent 200,000 at Walmart and 200,000 at the local grocery store.
No, sorry, $200 at each of those.
And man, I was getting very nervous. I'm like, we need to have a conversation.
Sorry.
I'm like, oh my gosh, what is going on? So with micro purchases, when it is a food item, okay, let's say that week Labatt shorts you some food item that you know you could run and get at Walmart on the spot. That's a true micro purchase. You go, you get it, and there's your menu. You've met your needs for, you know, your meal pattern guidelines and what have not. That's fine. Even if you went to Walmart several times throughout the year and had to make a few little emergency purchases for food items because you got shorted by your awarded vendor, they didn't have an appropriate substitute they could give to you, you go and you buy. Okay, that's a true micro purchase. Now, where does the question come in? If for some reason by the end of the school year you did run to Walmart and your local grocery store and your purchases exceeded 10,000 or 50,000, now what comes into question is your contract management. And what's going on? Why is your vendor not getting you the products promised? And maybe that vendor needs to be terminated because they are not fulfilling the terms and conditions of your contract. And you need to go to the next available awarded or second best responsive and responsible vendor that bid your solicitation. So, you know, the little onesie twosies, oh my gosh, you know, I didn't got shorted a couple of heads of lettuce or didn't get all my chocolate milk. I know I can go and grab it. I've got to have it for today. That's all good. You spread the wealth, you go and get what you need. But if it's just over and over and over where you're seeing a very large amount spent on these off-bid external purchases, you need to start questioning what's going on with your awarded vendor and why aren't they getting you what you awarded to them? They promised they could get these to your school in the quantities you estimated. So that highlights a whole problem that needs to be addressed.
Okay. Do you have a formal bid template you would be willing to share?
So, well, if you're in my co-op, you can grab any one of my solicitations. I actually, you know me, love to streamline. I actually have a standard terms and conditions template that I use for every single one of my formal bids. And I have a special terms and conditions template that's used for like my commodity bid and service bid. So I do work off of templates. I don't have the solicitation templates out there, but you know, I do have a couple of other documents in that folder, such as all the regulations you need to have in a formal bid, neatly packaged by state and by federal. And the federal just went through an update. Some of the changes occurred in the CFR and locations of guidance. So I had to update some of the links. But and you've got that's in that folder, the Google folder I shared. But in the slide, when we get into formal, I do list many of the things. In fact, I think all of the things you need to have, but happy to share my solicitation. Absolutely. All right, any other questions? I knew micro would get us all tripped up here. It's a heavy hitter.
Yeah, we just have somebody else says, I'm so confused. So we really do have to bid out for repair services. Yes, absolutely.
Only if you are a really small district are you probably going to get away with using micro purchase for those types of repairs. But even the smallest ones, you're going to need to do a small purchase acquisition, get 3 quotes,
There were a couple questions over in the chat I knew the answers for. I put the answers there so y'all can read those over there.
Okay.
Shared bid price totals for companies that were not awarded, and it seems to have helped to continue receiving quotes. Maybe it helps when they see how off they were. They do not get frustrated, but we have to follow our guidelines. Okay. If they do a discount off price, is that a catalog bid? Would we get dinged?
So again, I mean, if they're going to do a discount off a price list, as long as they show you the price and what kind of a discount they're going to give you, so you have an end price, I don't see why that would be a problem. I know that I have a larger district in the co-op, and they do work off of a catalog list, but where it gets you in trouble is, let's say, and I know this occurred last year, and schools were given a finding for it. A distributor, the formal bid was awarded to a distributor for their finite list of items. Okay, maybe they had 400, 500, 600 items that were their finite list of specified items. And then the distributor bid categories. So let's say if the schools underneath this bid award, we're going to order some non-food items, they would get a 5% discount off of any non-food items that the distributor offered in their warehouse. If they were going to order janitorial items, they got maybe a 7% discount off of, but the items weren't listed and no pricing was shared. That was unallowable, because how do you know you're getting the best price and you didn't even procure for those? You didn't give quantities. You didn't have an estimated contract value on that. So it left it very open-ended and unknown as to what was your cost, So when you're getting a catalog list, you've got to see some kind of a price. And if they're going to give you a further discount if awarded based on your quantities for some of those items or whatever, then they have to list the discount where you can now see what's your end price. That's really the only way you have to see an end price. You have to know what your price is, because you have to know what your contract value is, so you can manage that contract and ensure that you're not purchasing beyond what you said you would purchase. And so now you're, getting into a situation where you could be purchasing items that were never procured. And that's the piece of it. Everything you purchase must be procured. Okay. And you have to have an understanding of what is your end price. What are you going to pay?
So we do have another question here, and we had a very similar finding in a procurement review to this year. So I know what TDA's answer was on it, but it says, I received a call from Coke and they said that starting next week, they are contracting out their delivery service with UPS. Is this allowable under the contract? So the one I'm thinking of is it was a contract with Pizza Hut, who actually delivers through somebody else. The invoice comes through that other company, but the contract was with Pizza Hut. And TDA did have an issue with that. And they said, okay, well, now it's going to be a sole source if that's the only place they use to deliver.
So yes, that would be unallowable. Now, in your terms and conditions, you should be having some type of language that addresses Subcontractors, if the awarded company is going to hire a subcontractor or independent contractor, whatever it is, if language supports it, that's fine, but you must be very clear that the contract is not with the subcontractor or the independent contractor. It is with the awarded company. Invoicing must come from the awarded company. Products and pricing must be in alignment with what was awarded to the awarded company. If they want to use a secondary delivery service to get their products with their pricing to you, and it doesn't cause an issue with the terms and conditions, then that would be acceptable. But no, they can't just pass off the award to another company and that company invoices you, because now that is out of compliance.
Yes, yeah, that's how
So, yeah.
TDA. That
So,
one,
I mean, if Coca-Cola wants to use UPS to deliver their products, I mean, that's a creative way of dealing with the shortage of drivers. As long as you are still getting your invoice from Coca-Cola and your invoice pricing matches your awarded bid pricing, okay, that works.
Yeah, I'm thinking that probably is to get around the driver shortages.
Yeah.
So somebody would like a break real quick.
Yep. I was going to give a break. We just got so into the weeds of micro purchasing. So let's go ahead and I won't even talk about this slide. It's there for you. It's the form through TEA for your self-certify to increase your purchase threshold. And it gives you all kinds of details of how you qualify and what you need to do. So just know that's on your slide there. But yeah, no, let's take a quick 5-minute break, or do we need a 10-minute break? What do people need? Throw it out there in the chat. Tell me what's going to help you out here. 10. Okay. All right. Let's take a 10-minute break. I'll put a timer up and the music and bathroom break. Go get another cup of coffee, what have you. And we'll be back. Okay, so we are back, and just going to finish out this section with micro purchase, and that it's a great idea to keep some kind of a micro purchase log. TDA does offer one on their Square Mills website. I have never created one. I've seen schools create all different types of Excel spreadsheets where they track when they use the vendor, and that way they have all the vendors listed that they could potentially use for whatever reason, produce or milk or food items. And that way they make sure they're rotating and spreading that wealth. So good idea, just to, track your purchases from whom and that sort of thing. All right. For some reason I can't get my slide to advance. Okay, moving on to small purchase acquisition. So small purchase acquisition, again, a little bit of an update in the ARM is the cost of the same category of products and services purchased over the CE's fiscal year. For small purchases, the aggregate purchase amount of the same category of products or services purchased within one fiscal year must not exceed $50,000. Now, you as a district may have a lower small purchase threshold amount. And like I mentioned earlier, I have seen districts with even as low as 15,000, which I thought was completely not fair, obviously. But with a small purchase, you are really looking at cost. This is a cost comparison from the quotes you get in, and you must document and provide whatever it is, product specification or technical requirement or whatever type of service you're going out for to every single potential vendor. If you're personally inviting, say 3 or 4, each one needs to get the same information. You are allowed to do a light evaluation as long as you're very clear what you're evaluating and why you would evaluate between the products offered. And it's a good idea when you're reaching out, say for those 3 quotes, and maybe a company offers up a product that's a different brand that you did not have listed as your recommended brand. Maybe it's got all the same bells and whistles. Maybe we're talking about a piece of equipment, or maybe it's a food item and you reached out to a distributor, they don't carry the brand you recommended, but they carry another comparable brand. So you may have to do some kind of a comparison between the two products. So it's perfectly acceptable to have an evaluation on a small purchase acquisition. It is recommended to obtain 3 quotes, 3 qualified sources. Now, if you can only get 2, that is acceptable, but you really should try to get 3. Sometimes we just can't get 3. Sometimes literally all you can get is 2. And if that's to the best of your ability, you just document that and you accept the 2 responses and you award, the winner. Price must be your primary consideration. So if you're not going out for just the best price, and maybe you've reached out to 3 vendors who carry the exact same product, same brand, same model, whatever it is, they're going to send you back a price on the exact same product, all 3. You don't need to do an evaluation unless there's something else involved, such as installation, if we're talking about equipment, but best price wins, hands down. Now, we'll warn you that if you release a small purchase acquisition and you've got your recommended, model number and piece of equipment or whatever this might be, and a vendor comes back and offers something a little better, price is a little higher, but it's got more bells and whistles, that cannot be considered because you did not ask for that. You went out for a very specific product and you're looking for the best price. And so if you go and award the vendor that offered you something a little more bells and whistles, and you paid a higher price, that could end up in a finding. I did see a school get into a little bit of trouble over that. So just be careful about that. Are you guys hearing me okay? I just had someone I thought was in the meeting trying to call me.
I'm hearing you fine.
Okay, thank you, Lana. So then obviously if you do an evaluation criteria, obviously it has to be in your solicitation and has to go out to all the invited vendors. Pretty straightforward on a small purchase. Obviously you're going to award a contractor for the goods or services. You have to manage the contract and make sure they're delivering to what was put out in your solicitation. And if it's something you're going to be getting over a period of time, not just hey, deliver this a piece of equipment, maybe we're talking about produce, or maybe we're talking about some food product. Make sure that is very clear in your description of the deliverables. And of course, documentation is king. You want to document all your procedures so that when you go through your procurement review and you're asked for some copy of your solicitation, you can easily produce it. Now I've got a few examples. These are straight out of the arm, and small purchases are pretty easy. This example is about fresh produce, and where the CE procured $13,278 worth of fresh fruit and vegetables from a local vendor. They were procured, ordered, and delivered all at one time with a single invoice. This would be acceptable for a small purchase acquisition. Now, if the CE had planned on ordering throughout the year and they had done their cost analysis, because you do need to do a cost analysis prior to a small purchase, just to ensure that what you're about to purchase is not going to exceed that $50,000 and push you over into maybe doing a formal bid. But if this was just a one-time annual purchase, that would be great. But if the CE was thinking, okay, I'm going to order these fruits and vegetables again later on, a month later or 2 months later, I must spend another 15,000-ish, and then maybe later, by the end of the school year, we're talking about maybe now a category of produce, and possibly a formal bid should have been done. So just be mindful of your planning and forecasting and do your cost analysis. Another example, out of the arm, the CE procured and ordered fruit and vegetables for a total cost of $21,933 and some change. Each Monday for 4 weeks, the vendor will deliver 1/4 of the total order. The CE receives 4 separate invoices specifying the products delivered. The products were ordered in a single procurement transaction, but the total aggregate cost delivered over time was $21,983. So that is still staying within that $50,000 threshold. Now, we are back to kitchen repairs and parts. I'm not going to delve into this because we literally just talked about this, but it is something that a lot of you will need to do a small purchase acquisition on. And then many of you are going to have to jump into a formal bid. So I've got a slide in here about this, even though we did just thoroughly cover it under micro purchase. But here you can see, how do you forecast with estimated quantities, historical and current year cost, total amount spent, and getting pricing on a complete list of available parts. Even when you don't know exactly what parts you'll need, that guesstimate, or at least just getting a list of available parts with pricing will suffice. I'm going to pause here. I've got an attendee calling me. Give me a moment. I'm just going to pause my recording again. Okay, I'm back. Okay, so I am not going to deep dive into this. You know, the point was in micro purchase that you're going to do a cost analysis and determine the most appropriate method for kitchen repair and parts. All right. Sample small purchase log that TDA does provide. You could create your own, some kind of a tracking spreadsheet. I put together a small purchase tool for my members, and let me share it with you. I took it a little further than TDA because if you are going out for, and it's just an Excel spreadsheet with several tabs. If you're going out for a small purchase acquisition on food products, well, guess what? You need to include Buy American provision. All right. You can't forget that. If it's a food agricultural product, you must have the bidders, you know, sign off that either what they're submitting in their bid response is of domestic, or if it's non-domestic, there's a whole lot of other information you need to gather, like country of origin, what percentage of it, if any, is of American food product. And then also a justification, which is on you. I'm going to talk about that later on, but you, the district, are the one responsible for justifying the purchase of a non-domestic item. So if it's food, you're going out for a small purchase, you have to include that. If it's a non-food, obviously we don't need it. But I've got just, and this is in the folder, not only have instructions, just bid checklist if you need it, a template that allows you to list your term of contract, the frequency of deliveries, how many campus drops are there, deadline to submit the proposal, if you've got a bid code that you're tagging the items with, and of course this could grow to, you know, whatever. I've got links to the cost price analysis and the Buy American form. I also include a no response form with a small purchase, because if you reach out to 4 or 5 companies, you need to get, you know, 3 quotes back, and you're thinking this company offers the products you need. I always include this because it gives you an idea if they don't send in a response, why? And then that helps you with future bids to do either a better job, or maybe they just no longer supply the products. And now you need to take them off your list as a potential contractor. So I do like having that in my bids. I include it in my formal bids as well. And it just gives you more documentation and helps you, you know, with anything in the future. And then of course, a sample of an evaluation criteria if you were to use this. Now, you get to create your own evaluation criteria. Now, some of us have for years used an 8 criteria that TEA provides, and I think they still use it. But problem with that one is that it allows a score on a past relationship with a vendor, and that is not allowable based on TDA's guidance. So you have to take that out. Pricing must be the heaviest weighted factor if you're going to do that evaluation. And what that means is that the total amount of points for price must be heavier than any other single criteria. It's not the accumulation or the total of all these points. It just must be the heaviest weighted out of each single one. So this could be a 29 if you wanted it to be 100 points, as long as price is the highest weighted, heaviest weighted, that's perfectly fine. So this is the small purchase tool I created a while back. TDA has one. You may come up with your own. It's nice to have something that is kind of neatly packaged that you can fill out, shoot it out to the vendors you want to invite to submit a quote. That way they get every piece of information you gave to every other vendor, and you're getting back exactly what you asked for from each vendor. And then that becomes clear who's responsive and responsible, because you do want to award that. Another thing you can do on a small purchase is you can also have renewal options if you wanted to include that. So keep that in mind as well. So you may, if you do a small purchase acquisition for your kitchen repair or kitchen parts, you could have, 2 or 3 year renewal options on that. Perfectly acceptable. All right. So that's just kind of small purchase. Any questions on that? Oops. Oh, hang on. Going back. Any questions on that small purchase? I know I kind of flew through that, but we spent a lot of time on micro, and small's pretty straightforward.
We do have at least one here for a small purchase. It says, so the $50,000 is aggregate per year. So as long as I have my 3 quotes each time I'm making purchases and do not go over the 50,000 per year, am I within the guidelines?
Yes. So again, TDA is considering that category of like items. So for example, let's say you do your planning for maybe some office supplies, and you realize that what you plan to purchase in office supplies over the course of your fiscal year is going to exceed 10,000. So you can't use micro purchase, but you're not going to exceed 50,000 in total annual aggregate cost. Do a small purchase acquisition, award a company, and now as the year gets rolling, you're always going back to that same company for the planned office supplies.
Okay, the next one is, can you cancel your bid and redo it if you find like you said, find through the bid process a product that has more bells and whistles?
Sure, you can. You want to have language, and I will say this, definitely include language in your solicitation about having the right to reject any and all bids on sound reason. So if you discover that you've gotten some responses that can't be fairly evaluated, then you can reject all the bids and then release a new solicitation. Just make sure that when you're about to reject all bids, that it's for sound reason, and that you won't have a risk of a vendor who did bid, who felt like they met the solicitation requirements, protest, And obviously, if you release the bid again, now your specification is going to change, because for like that example where the piece of equipment came in that wasn't exactly what was specified, it had more bells and whistles, it was more expensive. They didn't really bid what you asked for. They bid something beyond. So if you're going to consider that beyond more bells and whistles, then the next solicitation should be very clear that, hey, we're looking for this, but if you offer a upgraded model, that you're accepting of alternate options. So that that can certainly be, something you would put out in your new bid.
Okay. So early in the presentation, it was said that estimated quantities are considered a commitment to buy. Our district has always included in their T&Cs that those are estimates only and not a commitment to buy. Does doing so have any effect on how the rules are applied?
Okay, so what was that?
Their T&Cs? Terms and conditions, I guess.
Okay. Yes. Sorry, I just, for some reason, I was not connecting the dots on that one. I thought you said TMZ. And I'm like, isn't that a show?
Sorry.
See where my mind is. Okay. Yes, I do have in my solicitations, just like this person has stated, that, there is no guarantee. I can't guarantee that any of my districts will purchase a single product. However, by placing estimated quantities, which is regulation, I'm required to put out there what we think we're going to buy. My districts are telling me they're planning to buy this. Things may happen that prevent them from purchasing all those products, or even one of those products. Funding could go away, or maybe we get less funding, or maybe there's some kind of a change in what the students want. And while that product was great last year, they're tired of it, and now they won't pick it up as an offering this year. Many things can happen in the course of a school year. And so I don't think, anyone should, in our bids, we're always going to state that we can't guarantee. However, to the best of our ability, we are planning to purchase this much. And it is seen as a commitment, but sometimes things happen. I will say that, and I can't think of where it is exactly in section 17, but there is some written guidance in the ARM about the fact that if you have put out there estimated quantities and awarded bid, that you have to see the purchase of all of those go through before you do a separate bid for the same product. I don't know why a school would do that. Maybe they think they can get a better price after they've awarded a vendor for something. Now maybe they're thinking, oh, go out for bid for that same product with these other vendors and get a better price. But that part is not allowable. But you may fall short, for unforeseen reasons. And that is just what it is.
Okay, Carrie, we have a couple more, but I think I'll let you finish your presentation and then we'll come back to these.
Okay. All right. And I was perusing some of the questions in the chat in regard to utilizing district bids, and I'm going to address that in this next section on formal procurement methods. And I know I am skirting on short time here, so we'll try to get through this quickly. All right, so formal bids. So we've got competitive sealed bid, which is an invitation for bids. This is where you're going to have clear specifications and requirements. Offers differ only in price, and you must explain how you will evaluate if a bidder submits an alternate option, which must be allowed. So you must allow, so if you're going to put out there, hey, I want this item, this brand, this label, whatever it is, or equal, if you get an or equal alternate, then you must be able to evaluate. Also, you must be able to evaluate if there's a tie in pricing. So that could be, is there a delivery charge? Is there an installation charge? Is there a fuel surcharge? How quickly can they get me the product? If I need it, next week or next month, but there's going to be a delay with one vendor getting me the product or products and the other one isn't delayed, that might also be a tiebreaker. So when it comes to an IFB, it is really price that is the only difference, unless you have to evaluate an alternate product that was offered. With a competitive proposal, which is a request for proposal, you're still going to include those specifications and requirements. Detailed offers, which includes a cost reimbursable, typically on construction contracts only, or firm fixed price, are going to come in. Award goes to the most responsible and responsive bidder. It's not just based on price. And this is really ideal when just only awarding on price is just not quite appropriate. I don't ever do IFBs. I do RFPs only because there are so many factors that go into my bids and so many different members utilizing the bids, and we do a very extensive evaluation. So just depends on really kind of what you're going out for. Both formal solicitations, whether IFB or RFP, require several federal, USDA, and state TDA certifications and affidavits to be compliant. Now, this is where I will tell you, if you are utilizing a district awarded bid, and a perfect example is janitorial supplies, paper supplies, a lot of times the district will go out for bid and award a vendor for all the school departments, including child nutrition. However, in order for you, child nutrition, to purchase off of that awarded bid and be in compliance, that bid must include everything that's required in a child nutrition formal procurement method. 9 times out of 10, it does not. And schools will get a finding because now they are purchasing off of a bid that was not in compliance for child nutrition. I've made this very easy for child nutrition departments to hand over a couple of documents to their purchasing departments and bring those bids up to speed to be child nutrition compliant. And these are in the folder. One is a Word document that is only the federal regulations, all the certifications and affidavits that one needs in a formal procurement method. And the way this works is you've got your table of contents that tells you each one, along with an active link to where it's located on the internet. And then you just literally take this document and throw it into a solicitation. Now it goes through, you might have to make some updates, obviously, goes through each one of those documents in full, where they initial, check yes, they agree to each certification. So it's laid out like this. They need to submit your certificate of insurance. They get a sample. So I've got one for federal. I also have one for the Texas regulations. Again, table of contents. You've got all your things that need to be included in a formal procurement for child nutrition with the updated link of where to find that in the ARM or the CFR. And same setup. You've got your checkbox and initials. So I say, grab these forms, share them with your purchasing departments. It will help your purchasing departments greatly to understand. And though they will notice there are same regulations in child nutrition as there are in Edgar. And then there are some that are not. Texas is probably the most restrictive in the fact that we have so many more regulations than many other states. So bring your purchasing departments up to speed with these 2 documents. Take them and use them. That's what they're there for. The federal was created. I was a participant on a national task force right before COVID. And we were trying to create a template that any school in the nation could use for formal procurement of the federal regulations. And we had goals to take it down to a state level. And Julie Fletcher with Dallas ISD and I worked together to create the Texas one. And so those 2 are templates I put in every single one of my formal RFPs. So feel free to use what you need there. I did in the slides list several things that you'll want to put into, obviously, your solicitation. And this is just the same list, kind of what you just saw, but I've got it on the slides if you decide not to grab the documents. So at least it's here. And I did update the links like I'd done in that. Love my picture of the dog. Tires you out, right? All these regulations. So just know that those documents are there, and same with these slides on the state certifications. Everything is laid out and explained in both of those documents. Makes it very easy to allow a purchasing department to bring those bids up to speed. But you have to think, when you are going to use a school district bid, if you're in a procurement review and TDA says, hey, we need to see your solicitation document, your advertisement, your evaluation, not only the overall scores, but the individual evaluations from those that evaluated, the cost analysis, your forecast and estimated quantities. Could you check those boxes and provide those documents and know 100% they're in compliance with child nutrition? And if you can't answer those questions and know 100% confidence, yep, I've got that and we'll be in compliance, then you probably should not be using that district bid. And you need to turn around and explain why to your district you can't use the bid they awarded and what needs to happen to make it compliant. I've tried to mind this gap of understanding between purchasing, general purchasing departments and child nutrition departments through TASBO. I will be doing another training for TASBO in the spring regarding this. It's so needed, and there's still a lot of disconnect and not fully understanding that child nutrition has so much more that it needs to go into the bid than what they're typically doing based off of EDGAR. And no, you don't need EDGAR in your bids. You need USDA and TDA regulations. I also included a list. I don't have this anywhere else. These are only on the slides. This is just not the full list, but these are terms and conditions that you must include. You can find these in the ARM in your formal bids. So you can see it's quite a bit, but you want to explain out all these things because this is what the vendor needs to adhere to. All these agreements and terms. But you can see it's quite a bit. This is why bids are 50+ pages long. But you need to address all kinds of things. Price changes. Do you allow it and when? Or do you not allow it? How can you add products? Can you add products? Around what terms? What about credits, discounts, and rebates? Material change, what does that look like? I will tell you that material change should be no more than 10%. That is the expectation from TDA regulation. But all these things need to be addressed. And like I said, I'll drop my solicitation over there in that folder so you guys can take a look at the language I have around this. But you can tell it's quite a lot. Now, as far as differences between IFB and RFP, not a lot of difference with the exception that with an IFB, it's pricing wins, RFP, best value, most responsive and responsible vendor wins. With both IFB, it is a sealed bid until the moment you open it. So this is a competitive procurement method for a fixed price contract. Clear specifications and technical requirements. The bid must stay sealed. When you receive those bids in the office, or if you receive them electronically, they cannot be opened until the opening date, which must be clearly stated in the solicitation, the time, the date, and the location. And it must be a public opening. You must receive minimum 2 responsible offers. And of course, it's a firm fixed price contract award. So you're awarding based on the price. Like I said, it has to be open publicly, and 2 employees minimum must be present, just to have one that's opening, another one that is witness, that everything is done to the T. And if for some reason a winner can't be announced right there at that public opening, because keep in mind, pricing is the deciding factor, then in the solicitation, you should have language around, all right, if you can't announce a winner based on whatever reason, you're going to spend 2-3 days, 72 hours, 24 hours going through the evaluation that was shared in the solicitation based on whether it's a tie or an alternate is offered. And then you will publicly announce the winner. And however you do that, whether it's through email, whether it's on your website, however you will follow through with that public announcement. Otherwise, if you get at least two bids for the same product you went out for bid and best price wins, you're going to announce it right there in that public meeting. Obviously, you're going to come up with your own rubric for evaluating and special situations. There it is. Any or all offers may be rejected if there is sound documented reason. I will tell you this past year, I had 2 bids that I had to reject all offers and start over. One was because in the middle of evaluating, some sensitive information was shared about one of the vendor's bids to another vendor, and that then became compromised. So I had to start over because obviously that wasn't fair. But once a bid's compromised, even if you go out for that second, re-release, information is out there, and that's just unfortunate. But just, you want to have that language in there if you do need to, start over, but just make sure it's for a really sound reason and that you document why you rejected all offers or any offer and why you started over. Obviously, the formal bid, whether it's an IFB or an RFP, you've got to publicly advertise. You must give sufficient response time, minimum 2 weeks. Minimum 2 weeks. If it's a larger bid, you may want to give up to 6 weeks. It just depends on the size of the bid. How many products is that vendor having to get pricing on? How much is involved in the bid submission process? You want to ensure there's full and open competition. And it is expected that you advertise in a widespread publication. So a little local small town paper may not be sufficient and may not satisfy that widespread publication. So a larger city, such as the Dallas Times, might be a more acceptable place to advertise. You can also use the electronic state electronic business. I can't think of how it goes. It's an electronic, it's a website. You can also, as a supplemental source for advertising, use the electronic business statesman, business something. But that can't be your only place of advertising. You still have to do an actual published ad. And when that ad publishes, you want to get a photocopy of the actual advertisement. Just providing to procurement review a document that shows what you wanted in the ad that was sent over to the Dallas Times, that does not suffice. They want to see the actual published ad. It must be run 2 weeks in a row. And so you want to have copy of week 1 and copy of week 2. When those bids come into the office, you want to stamp them with a date stamp and maybe an initial of the person who received them. And you want to store them in the same place altogether so that no single bid gets misplaced or lost. And that way you just carry the box in, you have all the received sealed bids, and you open them right there in front of whoever's attending the public opening. So a little different with the IFB on that. Obviously, maintain all your documentation. You also should have a method for Q&A for all potential bidders. Typically, it's on a website. If you're using maybe an eBid software, which many of you do, often these eBid softwares have a place where you can make a public notice that goes out to all potential bidders that have, logged in and taken your solicitation documents. Or maybe you have just an updated Q&A Word document that when you get a question, you document the question, you answer it, and then that goes out to all potential bidders so that everyone sees the question asked and your answer. Because if one bidder's asking it, another one might have the same question. And now you're creating that transparency. Obviously, you want to save all your documentation. That's important. And any questions on an IFB? Again, oh, yes, thank you. Electronic State Business Daily. Oh my gosh. Part of the text is Comptroller's Office. Thank you, Elizabeth. She put that in the chat. I can never get it right. Again, that's just a supplemental source to your published ad. So don't get caught just placing your ad there. It will not be sufficient. Anyway, now she's being funny. So any questions, Lena, on an IFB?
Yes. So if a vendor is awarded for a non-fans bid for paper example, can you send the form after the fact to be able to use the vendor?
Oh, so if it's a district bid and all those certifications were not signed off on, is that what we're?
I think that's what they're trying to say. Yes.
I'm not sure. I'll be honest. In my humble opinion, I would not think it would be a problem to, shoot those certifications over to the awarded vendor and ask them to sign off on that, because you're not part of your evaluation in a formal bid is, were they responsive? And responsive would mean that all bidders signed off on everything. They filled out all the right forms. They've submitted all the right documents. If the awarded vendor says, "Oh no, we're not going to fill this out," well, then you've got a problem. But it's not like it's a make or break deal, If trying to figure out how I want to say this that it makes sense. You're evaluating what's bid. And while part of your evaluation for a responsive vendor is that they did check all the boxes and initial and sign in all the appropriate places. Now with a IFB, if they didn't, that can disqualify a vendor. In an RFP, you can actually reach back out and say, hey, you forgot to sign this. Can you sign this for me now? That is all some flexibility with an RFP. So in my opinion, if you're going to send just those certifications over to the awarded vendor and ask them, hey, we need you to fill this out to create a compliant bid, I don't think that would be a problem. I would like to ask TDA on that, because I certainly don't want to guide anyone in a direction and it not be the case and you get a finding because that wasn't an acceptable approach. So Lana, if you will, I'll tell you what I'll do. In the Google folder, I will create a Q&A pending TDA answer document. And that way when I get the answer back, I can email everyone that attended and you can go in and take a look at TDA's answer. So I personally don't think it should be a problem. I mean, you awarded the vendor based on the products offered, the price, the school went through an evaluation. This is just, in my opinion, a formality. That's the word I was looking for. It's a formality. But if the vendor is not agreeable, then no, I wouldn't say you've got to tell your purchasing department, we can't buy off of that bid. But I'm going to get TDA to weigh in on this. Just making a note on this. Okay. That's a great question. Okay. Anything else on that, Lana?
How do you do a formal bid for produce with price fluctuations?
So as I mentioned before, you in my produce, I do an RFP for produce. And I ask for 2 weeks worth of pricing at different times in the school year so that I can do a side-by-side comparison. Is one vendor trending more pricey than another vendor? But we award on the quality of the products offered. We award on, is there a minimum delivery requirement? So if one vendor, pricing is pretty comparable for the 2 times during the school year, but one vendor requires $150 minimum order and another one doesn't have a minimum order. Okay, well that's an edge, because now I've got a vendor that's meeting the quality, the price seems comparable, but they don't have a minimum. So this helps everyone buy their produce, versus someone who's got this high minimum. Fuel surcharges, delivery charges, that sort of thing come into play. Quality of the produce obviously is an evaluation, and the quality of the service. Typically it's the same vendors we use every year, and we know, historical, hey, how's the response time? Or if it's a new vendor, then obviously we're going to follow up with references. But it is a little different because you're not technically awarding on pricing, but you are evaluating pricing, and you can give an evaluation score based on pricing, because now you're seeing what was your fixed price in the second week of March and what was your fixed price in the third week in October. Now you've got 2 sets of pricing that was actual pricing, and now you can evaluate and apply that pricing score calculation to determine points for this particular criteria of pricing. So you actually can get a pricing score, even though it's fluctuating. And that's how we award that bid. That makes sense, hopefully?
It did to me. Thank you.
All right.
For a formal bid for parts, if 5 vendors respond and we award 3 vendors with 1 being primary, do we still have to get 3 quotes every time we buy a part?
No, if you've formally went out for bid and you've awarded a primary winner, and if for some reason that primary can't provide you with the product needed that was awarded on the bid, you got to go to a secondary or a third one. No, you don't have to get 3 quotes. That's a formally procured and awarded bid. That's why you do a formal procurement method, so you can alleviate the need for getting 3 quotes every time you got to go and buy something that might be exceeding 10,000. Yeah, that would take some of the heavy lifting off your plate throughout the year, because now you've got this formally awarded vendor and you're just going and you're buying.
That was going to be my answer, but I wanted you to, because you're the expert. So
sometimes. Most of the time. I'm just kidding.
Oh, well,
You know your stuff, Lana.
You're the expert.
No, you know your stuff.
Our district purchases the custodial supplies, and the district has a warehouse that they sell to all departments at the same price. Is there a problem with this operation?
Keep in mind, everything you purchase with your child nutrition funds must be procured. So depends on how much you're spending. That if your district is selling the products to you, I mean, it just sounds like you're just purchasing. I mean, you're purchasing off of an already awarded bid. So I'd have to say the fallback to that is that bid compliant with child nutrition regulations? That's no different than just saying you're purchasing off of a district awarded bid, because that's basically what you're doing. Even though the district calls it, they're selling it out of their warehouse, they procured the bid, they hopefully procured a bid for those products that are being delivered to the warehouse. And now you're, instead of just buying from the vendor underneath that procured bid, you're just buying from the warehouse underneath that procured bid, right?
What it sounded like, and my assumption would be to save maybe some delivery fees, because now we can buy a big quantity at one time.
Well, I mean,
my assumption on that.
Right. I think I would just look at it from the angle, is the district bid for those products in compliance with child nutrition regulations? And if it is, then you can buy off of that awarded bid. Even though you're paying the district back, basically. So the district is buying and you're paying the district back with funds, but something has to be procured here because that's a requirement. So I don't know if TDA would look at that as, okay, your district is one source of a bid, but you need to get other bids to make sure you're getting the best price. Now that might be the case. Another for the Q&A, okay? I will ask that question. Because in this instance, slightly different. So if your district procures a bid and you're purchasing from that vendor off of that procured bid, that's one thing. But now your district is bringing in products into the warehouse, whether they procure or not, and they're turning around, they're selling it to you, child nutrition department. So you're probably basically, quote unquote, writing the check to the district. You're buying it from the district. Is that correct? Whoever asked that question?
Yes, that was, yes.
Okay. Let me find out. Let me find on that one. That was a great question. I've never been asked that question. Okay, awesome.
Okay.
All right.
So what if the items aren't listed on the approved bid? For example, we have an approved smallwares bid, but we now need items that were not originally listed. Can we purchase from that vendor without having advanced pricing?
So it all depends on what language and how the bid was evaluated and awarded. So it always worries me when I hear the word approved, because sometimes I think that doesn't mean that it was actually formally procured, that it was just an approved vendor because maybe they signed some certifications, but they never responded to an actual formal procurement solicitation. So I'm not sure if that was just a loose use of the word, or it's not a procured bid, but it's just an approved vendor that had some items that were told they would be purchased. Anytime you're going to purchase an off-bid item, meaning it wasn't part of the solicitation, it wasn't listed anywhere with estimated quantities, you're now purchasing a non-procured item. If your solicitation supports additional items, because maybe you did what's called a market basket method, where you in your bid you have, say, 100 specifications, 100 items you've specified with estimated quantities, but you state in your bid that this contract value you're putting out there for this particular award, the items specified only represent 90% of the actual contract value, because you are leaving 10% as flexible spending for maybe we slightly understated estimated quantities somewhere. Maybe there's a new item we want to get. Maybe there's something extra we forgot. It leaves you that flexibility. So it really depends on how you set up your solicitation and that contract award. If it's written in language in your bid, then you probably have some flexibility. If it's not, then you don't, and you'll have to procure for those items. And it's okay if you have to go out for a small purchase, acquisition, or even a micro purchase, you could buy from an awarded vendor on a formal bid. So for example, let's say you've got Labatt. Let's say you're purchasing through a co-op and you're purchasing from Labatt. This is a formally procured bid. You've got all these hundreds of items, but man, you found this one stellar item and it's not on bid, but you got to have it. You can't live without it. Well, forecast how much of this great item are you going to plan to purchase through the year? Can you do a micro purchase? Or do you need to do a little small purchase and reach out to maybe 2 other distributors who might carry that product and see what kind of price you can get on that? That'd be like just a little, 3 quotes. Now, if you're going to exceed $50,000, then that's a whole nother situation. But even with that, you might be exceeding your 10% of contract value. So you just have to kind of do a cost analysis and some planning, see what you can do. And it could be Labatt that comes in with the best price. So they've already got your business. So now you've got this spectacular product on a separate bid, but Labatt's still delivering it to you. And it's just coming in with your weekly delivery. Can happen.
Okay. Is it in compliance for a manufacturer gets the product to us via a distributor, then the distributor bills us using the awarded price from the manufacturer?
Well, there's going to be some kind of a delivery fee or markup involved there because distributors don't do business for free, at least none that I know of. And basically what you need to do is if you have an awarded a product through a manufacturer and they don't deliver directly to your district, you've got to find a distributor. Then you're going to need to go out for what they would call a drayage on a drayage bid, meaning you're going to reach out to 2 or 3 distributors. You're going to send them the list of the products you have awarded with the manufacturer, and you're going to ask for a delivery price to come back at you. And then you're going to award the least expensive because you've already got the product awarded. And now you're just saying, hey, distributor A, B, and C, how much are you going to charge me to deliver to my district? It's a drayage bid, basically. Hope that makes sense.
Okay. We have self-certified and increased the micro purchase limit to $49,999. Does this eliminate our need for small purchase? Or would we just use small purchase for planned purchases and would not need to be equitable?
So, and of course, self-certify is fairly new to me this year. Keep in mind your definitions of micro purchase and small purchase. So that self-certify for micro purchase really helps when you've got those one-offs that are exceeding 10,000. You've got an emergency or unplanned purchase that you need to make that was going to exceed that 10,000, and now you've got this 50,000 threshold that allows you the ability to utilize micro purchases when you have a true micro purchase need. Micro purchase is typically not for a planned routine delivery of products that are going to exceed that micro purchase threshold. When they're planned and routine, typically that and they're upwards past the 10,000, that where you would normally use a small purchase method. I don't think not everything qualifies for a micro purchase. So you have to look at what you're purchasing, when and why, and does it fall into the definition of micro or definition of small? Even though you've got this micro threshold of 50,000, that just gave you more flexibility for those true micro purchases.
Okay, we've put out a bid and awarded it to company A. Company B that did not get it is requesting information such as what was the winning bid. Do we need to, upon request, provide them any information?
Yes, that is public record, and they need to make a public information request to your district for what, and they need to be specific about what they're asking for. Do they want to see the bid tabulation? Do they, what exactly do they want to see? And then you, as a district holder of that awarded contract and bid, have up to 10 days to provide what was requested. Now, you may go through a legal firm, and that legal firm will respond within 10 days, and the legal firm may go through other processes. I can't remember what, attorney general, thank you. My mind is not working great today, obviously. That legal firm may go through the attorney general to review what's been requested and determine, is this proprietary information or is it not? Often in a solicitation, you may, vendors can tag certain information as proprietary, not to be, publicly shared. Typically, that's when they have like a markup and they want to know how markups are factored or calculated, but in price that's awarded, typically that, if a vendor wants to see what was awarded, they have the right to ask. With Region 10, any vendor that wants to see any of my bids, that's why my bids are behind a password. They have to make a public information request to Region 10. The Deputy Executive Director reviews what's been requested. And then if they feel like it's appropriate, it can be shared in that, or if it needs to go through legal. So, yeah.
Okay, I think this next one's probably something to send to TDA, but you may know. If I have sole sourced a company with TDA software, their annual software agreement, and TDA has put a cap amount on it, how do I procure any replacement parts that are proprietary to software company like pen pads when TDA has not allowed for any additional amount on the sole source? Can I sole source the same company with TDA for an annual and then submit another sole source for repair parts?
So if you're using that point of sale or whatever it is that you're using, and you're going to go out on your own to get repair parts or upgrades or maintenance or whatever, no other company can work on that. That is a computer code that is considered proprietary. So I would still think you could make that purchase under a sole source approval with TDA. I'm not sure how they're working that. I had not heard there was a cap, and I don't know if that means if you were to reach out to TDA and say, hey, TDA, I want to add the inventory module on to this menu module, with Primero Edge, TDA is probably going to come back and say, no, we've capped any additional stuff on this software. But if you're, they're not going to provide it to you. But if you wanted to pay for it and it's coming from the same company, I don't know. That's definitely a TDA question, but I would just think that'd be qualifying as a sole source. I would just fill out the job form and put it over to TDA and see what comes back.
That'd be my recommendation. Yeah, and I haven't gone into that sole source document to see what it's requiring, but I didn't realize they had put caps on anything. I thought it was really just you're saying this is the only company that could provide it. But
yeah. We're going to look at that document in a minute because I made it into a Word document and I'm really on short time, but I'm going to try to get through these methods. So with the RFP, and I don't know, do you have any more hanging questions out there? Sorry, Lana, didn't mean to cut you off.
There's one, but we can come back to it at the end.
Okay. I'm getting nervous about my time because I got 10 minutes and I know I'm way past due, but we've had some very great questions and conversations. So that's been really good. So like with the IFB, a lot of the same things. Public advertising. Price must be the primary consideration, but you can have this whole other evaluation rubric added to that you're awarding the most responsive and responsible and best value vendor. 2-week minimum response time, depends on the size of the bid. You may want to give more. Third type of formal procurement is a non-competitive proposal. And this is when 3 things could happen, okay? First, competition has been deemed inadequate, meaning you released a formal bid, you only got back 1 response, and now you need to award that vendor, but you do your due diligence first and you document why did you only get 1 response, and you prove it was nothing that you did to prevent fair and open competition. Public emergency or urgent need, like Hurricane Harvey, obviously, public emergency. Item only available from a single source. This would be like your POS software. So Sole source is when no other company can provide the product or the service. And the reason POS is a true sole source is that it's computer code. And whoever created that computer code is the only person that can work on that computer code. So this is a true sole source. And what you can do is you can get a letter from the company that provided you the software and continues to provide you with the maintenance and the upgrades, stating that their computer code is proprietary. Simple as that. And that becomes part of your approval process for being allowed to spend the money on that sole source purchase. No need to get 3 quotes, no need to do a formal bid for the continued maintenance of those POS systems. So that's really what a sole source is about. Now, when you've got like non-competitive, or you get just one bid, obviously that can turn into not so much a sole source, but just a non-competitive bid where you can award the one bid, but you just have to document and prove why. Let's see if I have anything else in my notes I want to say about this. Talk about the POS. One thing to keep in mind about your POS is one thing that people get confused is that when that initial bid went out, you were soliciting for a software program to handle all of your point of sale, whether it's inventory, menu planning, what have you, whatever else goes into all that. You awarded the vendor with the best offer on the software, but along with that came maybe 3 or 4 or 5 years of maintenance upgrade. At the end of those 4 or 5 years, you're not going to go back out for new software. So much work has gone into this. I mean, data entry, upgrades, what have you. You're hanging on to the software. So now you're just on an annual maintenance upgrade situation. It's proprietary. I think that's pretty straightforward. There's a job form on Square Mills that you can not download, but fill out right there online. I did take their JOT form this year and I turned it into a Word document, and here's why. It's an online form only. Once you filled it out, you couldn't download it, you couldn't print it. And right now, I'm going to jump to emergency procurement. It's one of my upcoming slides. Right now, TDA is not requiring approval on an emergency procurement. And this is for things like trays or containers where your awarded vendor cannot get you utensils. You're trying to serve your lunches, but you have no spoons or forks, or you've got no trays, or there's no containers, whatever. It is a pandemic. It is awful. And so TDA has said, you don't got to get approval. You just go, if you can find it, get what you need. There is no threshold. So if you got to have a high volume purchase, you're a really large district, you just go and you buy it, but you got to document it. And well, what do you document? Okay, well, in my mind, that made sense. If you normal school year, if you're going to do an emergency procurement, you got to fill out this online job form. Well, it's asking you all the pertinent questions, right? What program? Is this caused by COVID? Is this emergency or sole source? And then it tells you, upload copies of supporting documentation and exactly what they want to see. So here it is, all laid out for you, exactly what's expected in this job form for documentation. But now you don't have to fill out the job form. You just got to document. Well, what do you document? Well, here it is. I gave it to you right out of the job form. This goes through everything that TDA asks. This is their JOT form in a Word format. This becomes your documentation for emergency procurement, neatly packaged. And so if you're in procurement review next year and they say, hey, where's your documentation on that emergency procurement of those trays, you whip out this document and you go, here you go. Here's my documentation. Here's what we did. Here's all the supporting documents, my invoices, whatever. So neatly packaged into a nice little Word document. So in a normal school year, you do have to get approval on an emergency procurement situation. And you do have to fill out the JOT form and upload supporting documents. Be mindful of what is really needed to serve students. Cookies, probably not an emergency procurement need. Just keep in mind what's a true emergency. And keep in mind, if you're looking at something under emergency procurement, would TDA approve it if you had to get approval? So that's a question you just kind of keep in the back of your head. Would this be approved? These cookies, do we really need these cookies? I'm saying that because it came up in a conversation last week. Someone wanted to emergency procure some fortune cookies. So just be mindful of, is it really needed? All right, I'm pretty much out of time. So I'm sorry, cannot get to the end of this, but you guys had some really great questions. And I know your time is important and you're very busy individuals. Is there anything anyone wants me to address? It's not going to cut off at noon. I've got the meeting set to 12:30. I'm happy to continue through the presentation. Buying local, I think probably most of you are pretty good with buying local. Understanding what local is. It's for agricultural products. You can specify the geographical area by boundary or a county line or a certain miles from your district, as long as it's not too restrictive. One thing is the evaluation. And you'd be surprised what all local encompasses. Slightly processed products can be considered local, like bread from a local bakery or cut apples or carrots, things like that. As long as the product retains its inherent character. I mean, look at that. I mean, you could do yogurt or cheese because it's basically retaining its inherent character. I don't think a lot of people realize that. But like any bid, you're going to have clear specifications. You got to procure it properly based on how much you're going to spend. And obviously you want to leave it for, open and fair competition within a range. Can't be too restrictive. But probably the biggest difference about putting out a bid for local products, whether it's produce or beef or what have you, is that number one, you cannot list local as a technical requirement. It's an option. You have to leave it open to non-local bidders, and local is defined by you. And you cannot award solely based on local preference. You have to be giving a fair evaluation and criteria that promotes the award of a local vendor, where you either have bonus points in your criteria. So maybe your evaluation, price is still the main factor. And then maybe a criteria is 2 points if the vendor is local, or 5 points if the vendor qualifies as a local vendor under your definition. If they're a non-local vendor, they just don't get the 5 points. So that gives your local vendor an edge over winning the contract. So that's probably the biggest difference when doing a bid for local products, locally sourced products, I should say. Keep in mind, it's agricultural products that retain their inherent character and nothing else. Very different from if you're using state funds through TEA, which requires local, and some other things. So very different. So if your purchasing department is pushing you on local, come back to these slides. Gives you some information on that. And in my notes, I do give you a little example of how you use bonus or preference points. That's kind of good to see. I do want to show you one thing about Buy American, and it's in the folder. I know I'm going to lose some of you, but I put this out to my districts several years ago when they were going through their ARs. And obviously, all of you know, you've been through one. Auditors are going to ask you for your justification when you purchase a non-domestic product. And so I shared a form with the districts, and I said, hey, this is a great way to, the minute something rolls in through your delivery door that is of non-domestic, tag it right there on the invoice. Grab one of these, keep a stack by your delivery door, grab one of these, enter the product code, bananas. If you know the country of origin, great. Check off the justification, because you are responsible for justifying the purchase of a non-domestic product. It's not the vendor, the distributor, or the manufacturer. It's you, the district. So there are the 3 justifications. You keep a stack of these by your back door. I even had some districts that pre-fill because they're getting bananas every week. They might be getting kiwis every week. They might be getting, certain seasonal produce that part of the year it is domestic. Other parts of the year it's non-domestic, coming from Mexico or some other, other country. You grab this, you fill it out, you staple it to the invoice, and now you don't have to think about it ever again. And when you go through that audit and your auditor's looking through your invoices and they see, or they step into your refrigerator or your freezer and they see, oh, I see you've got these cherry tomatoes from Mexico. Where's your justification form? Well, we got those in last week. Let me pull that invoice. You whip out the invoice. There's your justification. You justified that product the minute it arrived into your campus. So that's in the folder. I say grab it, use it. It's a great little tool, and it's so simple, so simple. Your co-op, or if you did your own bid, if something is available as domestic, you need to know the price. You need to have a comparison so you can justify that the cost is not reasonable if you buy domestic. And sometimes in that process, we discover that a non-domestic product is more expensive than a domestic product. It's rare. Something happened last year. I caught that on something we were ordering in from Labatt. But most of the time, the non-domestic is way less expensive than a domestic. So feel free to use that form. If you're not, I encourage you, because it's going to make your life a lot easier, because then you're not backpedaling during a review on something that occurred 2 or 3 months ago or last week or whatever, trying to find, information. Section 17B is all about the Buy American provision. And I know I'm really short. Already covered that. All right, manuals, last part of this presentation. As you know, I have had a template for the Code of Conduct and the Procurement Procedures Manual. They get updated every year around July. I try to have them updated before school starts. This year I was a little behind. If you do not have your own already in place, I highly encourage you to grab these. They are set up so you can drop your school name in. You are to read through everything and make it your own. Some things may be different, but they are up to speed with current regulation. So take what you need, leave the rest, take the whole thing, whatever works for you. One thing I can say, and I think probably at this point, everyone on this call has their own standalone Code of Conduct for Child Nutrition and Procurement Procedures Manual. If the district wanted to hold on to this in the main office, or they wanted to be part of the standard operating procedures manual for the district, each of these needs to be a standalone section or chapter in that operational manual. It can't be nestled in with all the other district policies and procedures. It must be standalone for child nutrition only, because there are some differences. I'll give you a few little things here, but I'm totally out of time. So Lana, throw some questions at me if you got them.
There aren't any outstanding right now. I'm answering one right now. They were wanting to know if they could use that form as a whole, or did it have to be by campus? My answer is best practice is to have it at each campus.
Oh yeah.
That way it's being documented the moment that comes in the back door. But if they want to use it district wide, make sure they get the information ASAP so they don't have errors. And then I was just also letting them know TDA also created a form that they can use where if they've got an item, let's say mandarin oranges that we know are non-domestic, they can complete that form one time and put the school year at the top, and that is their documentation, and they don't have to do it every single time mandarin oranges come in.
Nice.
But we know we have those one-offs during the year. Frozen vegetables seem to be the one that always come to mind, and I want to say it's the Picked Sweet brand. I don't remember now, but
yeah.
Certain times of the year they come in from Mexico rather than US. And
yeah, I mean, there are quite a few seasonal. Labatt does a great job. So I've got, if you're in my co-op, all of those letters from Labatt explaining why they buy what, when, and how. And then there's a comparison spreadsheet that they give, and they tell you, January through June, this is available as domestic. July through December, it's going to be a non-domestic. So they do a really nice job of sharing information so you can better understand, when do I need to fill out one of these forms, or at least tag it, and justify the purchase of that form. So, but yeah, definitely every campus, just put a stack, I know those that are using this little form have a very easy time. And that way, every receiving manager at every campus. They know, just grab it, boom, fill it out. Unless you're doing the one time, hey, we're going to buy bananas all year. It's a one-time justification. And I had heard that. I have not seen the form, but thank goodness, because why has USDA not given a list of, we don't need to justify this. They're never grown in the US. I will never understand, but it's not, I'm not making decisions at the top. So there's that.
It does not make sense. And TDA did kind of create a list a couple years ago and their monitors were using it. And then TDA came back out very strong language saying you cannot create a list. There is no such thing. So,
yeah.
Carrie, I just want to expand real quick on the mandarin oranges because TDA did bring this up in a meeting a couple years ago. Now, I haven't seen it in a review, but they did mention that when they're looking at these non-domestic items, if they see that you have purchased mandarin oranges to put on your menu for twice a week all year, and that is a non-domestic product and you know it's non-domestic, what they're going to question is, why are you serving so much of that item? Why aren't you serving something that is a domestic product? Why not change your menu up to include more peaches or pears or apples or something that you can get domestic? So just keep that in mind when you're creating those menus, that when you know it's a non-domestic item, TDA would rather see you use it sparingly than all the time.
Yes. In fact, I have a colleague that had a conversation with someone at USDA once, and the response from USDA was, well, serve apples. I'm like, well, that person needs to eat an apple every day for the next year, and let's see how much they want apples. That's all I could say to that.
Yes. Yes.
Kids do like variety. They like all kinds of fruits.
Yes. And we want to give them variety. We want to encourage them to eat fruits and vegetables, but they're looking at our programs to help support the domestic agriculture. So
it's understandable. Yes. Sparingly. Yes. But don't, you know, what I tell districts is don't let this make you afraid to serve nice tropical fruits that are non-domestic, you know, at various times of the year, because kids need to be exposed to all kinds of fruits and it's healthy for their bodies. So my goodness. That's all I can say about that.
Very common fruit is pineapple. We don't produce enough in the US. So the majority of the pineapple we pull in is from non-domestic sources, and kids love pineapple. So
yes.
And grapes, bananas,
even yes.
Those are very common fruits. So
I know, there you go. Anyway, all right, everyone. Well, I don't want to keep you any longer. We promised a 3-hour presentation. Sorry I did not get to the end, but you guys had great questions. And I see someone is asking for a FAQ for this presentation. So I will try to get with Lana on that, and I will get answers to the 2 questions I wrote down for TDA to weigh in on. And I will put that in the Google folder and announce when I get that over there. But thank you for participating today. I always appreciate your attendance in my trainings, and you always make it great. So keep coming back. That's all I can say.